Good morning and welcome to the 2025 Local Program Symposium. My name is Mechler-Hickson. I'm the section chief for WisDOT Local Programs and Finance, and I want to start by thanking everyone in attendance today for your interest in local programs. Today's symposium has reserved 5.5 hours of time for both presentations and a short question and answer session at the end. If you have any questions as you're viewing any of the presentations today, you can submit those questions to the email address displayed at the bottom of your screen, dotlocalprograms@dot.wi.gov. WisDOT staff will be monitoring the inbox for your questions, and we will address them during the Q&A portion. Now, as we go through the presentations today, don't worry about taking notes. We will have a copy of the slide deck available on the WisDOT Symposium webpage shortly after the conclusion of today's presentation, along with the link to the replay of the entire symposium, which actually will be the exact same link that you used to initially log into the symposium this morning. We have a great selection of speakers today that include representatives from the WisDOT regions, from WisDOT Central Office, and from the University of Wisconsin. However, before we get right into the presentations, I do want to introduce a special guest who's going to be providing some opening comments. We are pleased to have WisDOT Secretary Kristina Boardman join us today. In September 2024, Governor Tony Evers appointed Kristina Boardman to serve as Secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. Secretary Boardman's public service career began with the Wisconsin State Assembly in 1995. She transitioned to WisDOT in 2005 and has held previous positions in the department, including Deputy Secretary, DMV Administrator, DMV Deputy Administrator, and the Director of DMV Field Services. Kristina enjoys both policy and operations work and especially appreciates the rewarding work of serving the public through the implementation of new programs. Welcome, Secretary Boardman.
Thank you so much, Merrill. I really appreciate it. So good morning. Thank you all for joining us for our local program symposium meeting. As he said, I'm WisDOT Secretary Kristina Boardman, and it's really my pleasure to welcome you all here. Really appreciate your presentation or your participation in today's meeting. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to highlight the important work that's happening across the state. Today, we're going to learn more about the programs and efforts to support local transportation infrastructure projects. About 90% of roadway mileage in Wisconsin is maintained and owned by counties, municipalities, and townships, which is why these local programs are vital to Wisconsin's infrastructure and really help local governments with needed improvements to local roads, highways, and bridges. WisDOT supports these programs with continued investments in multimodal projects so that we can deliver on our core responsibilities to safely connect the public wherever and however they choose to travel. Governor Evers in his 25-27 budget, which has been introduced, is the fourth in a row that would increase transportation revenues, especially in the local space. It boosts funding for important programs like a 3% increase in general transportation aids. These help cover the costs of constructing, maintaining, operating roads and streets under local jurisdiction, and a nearly 6% increase in routine maintenance agreements, RMAs, with the counties. That too is an important part of our efforts to support counties so that together we can be keeping the infrastructure in safe conditions. There are also increases that are included for SHR, the State Highway Rehabilitation, and major highway development programs. Also, the governor's budget empowers us to strengthen specialty programs so that we can continue to enhance safety and improve multimodal transportation infrastructure all over Wisconsin. And that includes funding for agricultural road improvements and support for local road upgrades. We know that our local roads are the first and last mile of nearly every trip made by Wisconsin residents and visitors, and a safe and efficient network of local roads is critical to the strength of our economy and our quality of life. And since 2019, we've improved together 8,600 miles of roads and highways and nearly 2,000 bridges statewide. And we're in the midst, in this fiscal year, prepared and are delivering on more than 400 highway improvement projects. And the local program symposium is part of the efforts that we need to lead the solutions that are tailored to meet specific and local community needs. We want to hear from you. And we're going to have conversations today about local programs that are state funded, some are federal funded, our highway safety improvement efforts, and transportation economic assistance or T grants, railroad coordination, bicycle and pedestrian updates, and much more. It's going to be a fun 5.5 hours. There's lots to talk about. And so really, these are the programs that strengthen our ability to make the state's multimodal transportation infrastructure as safe as possible. So thanks so much for allowing me to be here today and to welcome you. Great joke in the chat, so just keep them coming. But I really wish you all the best, and thank you for the important conversations that will occur today that help us get those priorities to chart our path moving forward. So thank you so much, Merrill.
All right. Thank you, Madam Secretary. So let's get started. Taking a look at today's agenda, I will kick things off with a short overview of WisDOT local programs and the formula-funded transportation programs that are administered in the department, specifically within the local programs and finance section. Following my presentation, we will have presentations on local program delivery oversight, the Wisconsin Local Technical Assistance Program that is administered through our partnership with UW-Madison. Then a presentation on our new TAPWeb online application portal for the federally funded Transportation Alternatives Program. And then an update, and that will take us to around 11 o'clock, 10:40, when we will take a short break. Next slide. So following the morning break, we will have a session on bicycles and pedestrians on local facilities, the planning and economic development area, a presentation on the Transportation Economic Assistance Grant Program, and then a presentation on consultant contracting. After that, we will take a longer lunch break. Next slide. So the afternoon session will start with a shorter session comprised of presentations on local program federal funds, utility coordination, railroad coordination, real estate, and then a recorded presentation on the Highway Safety Improvement Program. After that, we will take another short 15-minute break, time permitting, around 1:30. Next slide. And then after that final afternoon break, the symposium will close with presentations on Title VI requirements, local programs forecasting, and the local program environmental process. We will conclude with a short question and answer session. Again, if you have any questions as you are viewing any of the presentations today, you can submit those questions to the email address that's displayed at the bottom of your screen, dot.wi.gov. WisDOT staff will be monitoring the inbox for your questions. If we don't get to your specific question during the Q&A session, during the broadcast, don't worry, we will be emailing responses directly back to everyone. Next slide. So again, I will kick things off with a short overview of WisDOT local programs. Next slide. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with WisDOT local programs, we are the central office staff who administer and schedule the formula programs that assist local governments with needed improvements to local roads, highways, bridges, as well as bicycle and pedestrian facilities. Local programs is housed in the WisDOT Bureau of Transit, Local Roads, Railroads, and Harbors. And this slide shows the current local program staff along with the programs that they handle. My contact information is up top. Right underneath me is the contact information for Tim Alushagun, the local program supervisor. The individuals listed on this slide are all available to assist you with any local program question you may have. I know the contact information may be a little hard to read on a computer screen. Again, don't worry about rushing to write anything down. We will be making a PDF copy of this deck available on the WisDOT Local Program Symposium webpage at the conclusion of the presentation today. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through this entire list right now, but again, please feel free to reach out to any of the individuals here on the list if you have specific questions regarding any of the local programs that I talk about today, or again, please feel free to reach out to Tim or me directly. Next slide, please. So in WisDOT Central Office, our main focus, again, really is on administration and scheduling. For more project delivery focused questions, we also have dedicated regional local program managers that are stationed in your specific areas. And please note, we do have a couple of new names on this list. Again, I'm not, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through the entire list. It is going to be made available on the deck later today. If you have any delivery questions, though, regarding any of our local programs, these individuals are definitely a great resource to reach out to first, and at the very least can generally steer you to the right person who can address your specific project delivery question. Next slide. So as we talk about local programs, the first thing I want to highlight is really how individual local programs are funded. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about the bipartisan infrastructure law, which was passed in 2022, that increased funding for transportation generally. It's also known as IJA. Now, when we talk about bill or IJA funding, essentially what we are discussing is federal funding. The local programs we have where the non-local share is completely funded with federal dollars include the programs funded through the Surface Transportation Block Grant. Those include the Surface Transportation Program, the Carbon Reduction Program, and the Transportation Alternatives Program, or TAP. The non-local share for the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Program, or CMAQ, is also completely funded with federal dollars. In addition to these federally funded local programs, we also have some local programs that are funded with state dollars for the non-local match. The biggest examples of these are General Transportation Aids, or the GTA program, the Local Roads Improvement Program, or LRIP, and the newer Agricultural Roads Improvement Program, or ARIP. Additionally, we have one program, the Local Bridge Improvement Assistance Program, which receives both state and federal funding. And like the other exclusively federally funded programs, really has seen a large increase since the passage of Bill IJA. I'll go over each of these programs in a little bit more detail in just a couple of slides. Next slide, please. But in essence, the main takeaway from all of these recent incredible federal and state funding increases is that over the past few years, it has been a time of historic investment in our local road and bridge programs. Considering the improvements in Governor Evers' budgets to date since state fiscal year 2020, and considering local road and bridge program investments from state fiscal year 2022 and subsequent years projected through state fiscal year 2026, roughly $1.65 billion is being directed to WisDOT programs specifically for local road and bridge projects. And that total represents a more than doubling of prior funding to local road and bridge programs. You can add into that roughly another $200 million in the same time period for the multimodal programs, TAP, carbon reduction, and CMAQ. Additionally, General Transportation Aids alone supplies roughly another $550 million of state funding annually to help address local transportation needs. And all of these programs run through the local programs and finance section. Next slide. So I want to make sure that I give folks on the call today the path to go online and get some more information about local programs. On the main WisDOT website, if you simply type in local programs, the first result that pops up will be the local assistance programs webpage that you see displayed on the screen. The path is written out above. Again, the deck will be made available after the presentation today. There are links on this page in the box on the left-hand side of the page and matching links on the right-hand column. Clicking in either area will help you navigate to information on specific programs. For STP, LRIP, and local bridge, obviously you'd want to select a road and bridge link. For TAP, CMAQ, or carbon reduction, and also some other railroad and harbor programs, you will want to select other aid. We are always looking for ways to improve these programs to make them more user-friendly. So if you can't find exactly what you're looking for, please always feel free to just reach out to the appropriate local programs contact for the program you're interested in. and we will make sure that we steer you to where you can find the right information and then use your feedback to better inform our webpage layouts in the future. Next slide. So as a simplified summary, really, of what we do here in local programs, WisDOT Local Programs in Finance provides the resources, encourages sound investments, and generally promotes the importance of local transportation systems to Wisconsin's transportation network, always in accordance with state statute. We administer and schedule the federally and state-funded transportation aids program statewide. We make every effort to accommodate local transportation needs and priorities. We respond to legislative initiatives and mandates that result from the state biennial budget process. We develop the fiscal mechanisms and the processes to distribute funding, be that through a committee-based application process like we have in LRIP or in TAP, or through the computerized rating and ranking of projects like we do in our local bridge program. And we do all of this really to ensure the maximum allocation of funds and efficacy on the local transportation system. Lastly, our section develops program policy, and it processes the applications and the state municipal agreements for all of the various transportation aids programs that are administered in the section. Next slide. So again, WisDOT Local Programs, we are a significant funding resource that impacts every single local municipality located in the state of Wisconsin. In state fiscal year 2025, we provided administration and will be dispersing roughly $562 million in state transportation aids through General Transportation Aids, or GTA. GTA is one of the largest programs in WisDOT's budget and is one that impacts every single municipality in the state. Every county, city, village, and town receives a GTA payment. We also manage a variety of special transportation aids in the local programs section, which include connecting highway aids, county forest road aids, expressway policing aids, lift bridge aids, as well as disaster damage aids. So that number that you see in the lower right-hand corner, 1,922, that is the total number of Wisconsin local units of government that benefit annually from WisDOT state transportation aids that are managed here in the WisDOT Programs and Finance section. Next slide, please. So for folks brand new to transportation funding programs, we thought it would be helpful to just briefly go over the main WisDOT federally and state-funded transportation grant programs. Some of the folks on the call may only have worked within a couple of these programs. Some of you, again, perhaps are not familiar with any of them. So really, we just wanted to provide a bit of a base on the local federal formula-funded and state-funded programs, all of which have regular application cycles that can be anticipated. Note the local programs webpage link provided again at the bottom of this slide. And again, the deck will be made available at the end of today's presentation. Next slide, please. So first, the Local Roads Improvement Program, or LRIP, established in 1991, LRIP assists local governments in improving seriously deteriorating county highways, town roads, and city and village streets. And please note that seriously deteriorating component is statutory. LRIP is an improvement program. That means it is not for regular maintenance or for new construction activities, and projects must be designed for a 10-year improvement life and be built to the appropriate standards depending on municipality type. Next slide. The LRIP program is managed by WisDOT, but projects are administered by local units of government and are locally let. LRIP is a state reimbursement program. It has three components: an entitlement portion and a competitive discretionary component, which pay up to 50% of total eligible project costs, and a competitive supplemental component, which pays up to 90% of project costs, with local governments providing the balance. Projects must be completed and contractors paid before final reimbursement. LRIP projects are administered in LRIP Web, which is an online application that was developed in partnership with our IT partner NetKinetics. And we do have William Arnold from NetK with us here today. He will be talking a little bit more in depth about LRIP Web, along with some of our other local program online applications in just a few minutes. For now, I will just say that LRIP Web does have a registration process to gain access. You can note the link displayed on this slide. And it is the core hub for LRIP project management, processing new project applications, existing project changes, along with final reimbursement requests. Next slide, please. In the 2024-2025 LRIP program cycle, approximately $174 million in state funding was provided through LRIP to fund over 1,000 improvement projects distributed across every county in the state of Wisconsin. This map shows that distribution, with circles denoting county projects and triangles denoting town, city, and village projects. Next slide, please. While we're talking about LRIP, I want to give a quick mention today of a program that's related to LRIP that, that folks may have been hearing about, the Agricultural Roads Improvement Program, or ARIP. The 2023-2025 biennial budget provided $150 million in one-time funding for the brand new ARIP program, which was housed in the LRIP statute. ARIP was targeted towards projects to help improve deteriorating Class B designated and weight restricted roads throughout Wisconsin that restricted the ability of farmers to move full truckloads of goods off the farm to processors and to market. Projects could be funded at up to a 90% cost share, very similar to the LRIP supplemental program component. And the program needed to award projects within 3 years, and we must reimburse all of those projects completely within 5 years. Next slide. Now, ARIP, again, was just one-time funding that was included in the last state budget. Any future ARIP program cycles are dependent on the inclusion of new program funding in future state budgets. I don't necessarily want to speculate today as to whether ARIP will or will not be coming back in the 2025-2027 state biennial budget, but I definitely want to assure everyone listening that in the event ARIP does receive additional funding for additional project awards, the department will be able to accommodate that work through our new ARIP Web online portal, again, developed with our IT partners at NetKinetics. And when and if that happens, we will be sending out mass communications regarding any upcoming ARIP program cycle to potential local sponsors as soon as possible. Next slide, please. In total, for the 2024-2025 ARIP program cycle, 91 projects were awarded across the state for more than $149.5 million in ARIP funding. This funding will enable local governments to improve local infrastructure and benefit Wisconsin agricultural firms both logistically and economically. The map on this slide indicates awards by both ARIP selection round, blue is round 1, orange is round 2, and municipality type. On this map, squares indicate the counties, triangles indicate towns, and circles indicate cities and villages. In total, 299 unique ARIP applications were received in the 2024-2025 program cycle, reflecting $507 million in project costs. So a clear demonstration of local system need for this type of funding. Next slide, please. Next, we have the Surface Transportation Program, or STP. STP provides federal funding, so no state dollars, with STP projects subject to federal guidelines. STP provides federal funding for up to 80% of the cost of the local road or bridge improvement with a 20% local match. And the program is split into an urban, a rural, and a local component. Please note, connecting highways in Wisconsin are not eligible for STP funding. Connecting highways are local streets and roads that carry state highway travel through cities and villages, and they have their own dedicated funding stream. The STP program has funding sub-allocations that are based on census-defined population groups. In urbanized areas of the state, over 50,000 in population, Metropolitan Planning Organizations, or MPOs, determine the projects that will be funded through the STP program. And for all parts of STP, because WisDOT is the delegated authority for these federal funds, STP projects are all statelets with state oversight. The next presenters, Alex Dums and Jodi Jarosinski, will be going over the state letting, bidding, oversight, and consultant award process in a little bit greater detail. Next slide. So I also want to give mention about a little bit and talk a little bit about the newest STP program component, STP Local. The STP Local program component comes from a recent revision to federal code that allows states to set aside 15% of the funds that are allocated to the small STP urban programs between 5,000 and 50,000 in population, and the STP rural program in areas less than 5,000 in population, to fund roadways that are classified as minor collectors or local roads. Now, this change represents the first time that STP federal dollars have been made available to fund these lesser traffic volume roadways. To be eligible for STP local funds, the roadway must be located outside of an urbanized area, that is a population area of less than 50,000. And that last point sometimes causes some confusion. So just to clarify, if your community lies within an urbanized area, you are not eligible for STP local funds. So regardless if you are a small town, city, or village, but if you're within an urbanized area of 50,000 or greater, unfortunately, you do not qualify for STP local. The roadway must be located wholly outside the census-defined urbanized area. Next slide, please. So, yeah, I guess what do I mean when I say roadway functional classification? Basically, this classification structure is based around the role that the road in question plays in serving the flow of traffic through a transportation network. Roadways are assigned to one of several possible functional classifications within the hierarchy that is displayed here according to the character of travel service that roadway provides. Busier roads, the arterials, county highways, roads that are defined as major or rural collectors. These are the only types of roadways that had been eligible for STP urban and STP rural in the past. The new STP local component, what that did, it opened up STP eligibility for those lower functionally classed roadways that you see on the bottom, defined as minor collectors and local roads. But again, only in census-defined areas with less than 50,000 in population. This is really a big deal because the vast majority of roads in the state are classified as local roads and minor collectors. If you're interested in finding out more about the road classifications in your area, the link on the bottom of this slide, which goes to WisDOT's functional classification webpage, is definitely a great place to start. Once again, don't worry about scrambling to write that long link down. I know it's pretty long, and again, we will be making a copy of the deck available after the presentation. Next slide. The department has developed a GIS application that shows the specific roadways that meet the eligibility requirements for STP local. The link to that tool is on this slide. It's a great way to do a preliminary check on if a project area you are considering filling out an application for is eligible for STP local funding. On the tool, the blue roadways are eligible for STP local funding in the 5,000 to 50,000 population category. The purple roadways would be eligible for funding in the less than 5,000 population category. Please note, though, we are still in the process of updating roadway functional classification maps based on changes that are resultant from the 2020 US Census. So if you do have interest in applying for STP local or really for STP in general, definitely make sure to check in with your regional WisDOT local program manager or statewide STP local program manager Izzy Schultze to confirm eligibility for your specific project area. And the contact information for all of those individuals was included on slides shown earlier in the presentation. Next slide, please. Next, we have the Local Bridge Improvement Assistance Program. As I mentioned before, the local bridge program is both state and federally funded, which kind of makes it a unique program in local programs. Please note projects that involve new structure construction or structure removal without replacement are not eligible for funding through this program. Bridges must also be on a local street or highway with a clear span of 20 feet or more, and bridges constructed or reconstructed in the last 10 years are not eligible for funding through the local bridge program. Projects that are deemed eligible are firstly prioritized by your county highway commissioner before being submitted for statewide rating and ranking in our automated local entitlement system platform, or LES. That process utilizes formulas that are based on county entitlement balances and estimated project cost. Due to statutory requirements, all local bridge projects are statelets with state oversight. Next slide, please. Next, we have the Transportation Alternatives Program, or TAP. TAP is an entirely federally funded competitive grant program that provides up to an 80% federal project funding with a 20% local match. Like STP, TAP also has funding allocations by population subgrouping, and large population areas over 200,000, also known as transportation management areas, pick their own projects. Eligible activities for the TAP program include non-infrastructure type projects like planning studies and safe routes to school projects, as well as more traditional infrastructure design and construction projects of bicycle and pedestrian trails. Eligible sponsor types include local units of government, transit agencies, tribal governments, school districts, and nonprofit organizations. Next slide. One unique and extremely important feature of TAP that I want to highlight: back in 2012, the state legislature passed a commencement rule for the TAP program as part of the program statute. And this requirement says that a TAP project must go to construction within 4 years of the project award, the date on the award letter. Commencement also applies to non-infrastructure projects, but satisfaction of that requirement is measured somewhat differently depending on project type. This commencement rule really helps to foster the competitive nature of the TAP program, as local units of government must ensure that they can meet the commencement requirements as a part of the process. Because TAP is a competitive grant program, the department does cap TAP funding levels at the time of project award. Again, this means it's absolutely critical for TAP projects to be delivered on time, on budget, and in scope. As mentioned previously, TAP also has funding suballocations, again, for the large population areas, the TMAs, over 200,000, where those areas essentially select their own projects. Next slide, please. Now, recently in 2023, WisDOT introduced what is known as the TAP STARS program component. STARS stands for Safe Transportation Alternatives for Rural Schools. Nothing about this new TAP STARS component is necessarily new. It's all activities that have been eligible in TAP for quite a while, but it is a rural area TAP focused initiative, largely but not exclusively focused on safe routes to school projects, both for construction and non-infrastructure project funding that targets rural communities and schools that really have an undeniable need for the benefits of TAP safe routes to school type programming. Again, these are school districts where student trips frequently cover long distances. They could be in areas where a highway is bisecting a small town right next to the school, where there's a higher percentage of children that are likely to live further from school. STARS looks to support rural sponsors by first reducing minimum project cost requirements and the subsequent local match, but then also providing additional applicant support through stakeholder partnership for technical application assistance. A little bit later on this morning, Andi Bill from the University of Wisconsin Local Technical Assistance Program will be talking a little about the types of applicant support being made available through her organization that is helping to support the project application process across all of WisDOT local programs. Next slide, please. Like TAP, CMAQ is an entirely federally funded at an 80-20% cost share, and only projects in Wisconsin's air quality and attainment areas, comprised of 10 counties, essentially the eastern part of the state bordering Lake Michigan. Only projects in those air quality and attainment areas are eligible to apply for CMAQ funding. Because this is an air quality program, there is a technical assessment component, and potential projects need to pass that assessment as well as meet the maintenance area requirement. Next slide, please. The purpose of the CMAQ program really is to reduce emissions that are related to traffic congestion, improve vehicle and fuel technologies, reduce the overall number of motorized vehicle trips and miles traveled. Some examples of eligible project types include transit vehicle purchases, traffic control technologies, and the construction of bicycle and pedestrian facilities. Next slide. Lastly, we have one of the newer local programs, the federally funded Carbon Reduction Program. This project was designed, again, to reduce pollution by addressing projects that reduce emissions from on-road sources. Similar to other federally funded projects, the federal cost share on projects eligible for the Carbon Reduction Program is 80% federal share with a 20% local match. Future Carbon Reduction Program solicitations ultimately are contingent on funding being made available through the Wisconsin biennial budget process and annual federal congressional appropriations acts. We are currently examining potential opportunities to fund additional carbon reduction program projects next cycle. And should that determination be made, we will send out updated communications regarding future carbon reduction program project solicitations to all potential local sponsors. Next slide, please. Now, this year, we are going to be returning to more of a business as usual type approach in WisDOT local programs after several consecutive years of supplemental local program project solicitations. For all of our local programs, the way that we generally handle project design and construction programming is through program cycles. Usually our program cycle structure is 4 to 5 years with new program cycles starting every 2 years. And this is essentially the case for LRIP as well, although again, that is a state-funded program that's more directly tied to the biennial budget process. Our standard program cycle approach is set up to give local units of government 1 to 2 years for design prior to starting construction. So in essence, program cycle funding allows local units of government the ability to secure project construction funding while providing them ample time for project design. Please remember, as mentioned on previous slides, future agricultural road improvement program solicitations are contingent on the inclusion of program funding in future state budgets, and future carbon reduction program solicitations are contingent on funding being made available in the Wisconsin biennial budget process and in annual federal congressional appropriations acts. Next slide. So each WisDOT program cycle is meant to add an additional 2 fiscal years of funding for new projects. However, and this is an important point to keep in mind, any projects that are delayed and rescheduled into future fiscal years, or that are originally scheduled in years of cycle overlap, are automatically going to reduce the funding that we're going to be is going to be available, that we're going to have available to fund new projects. This means that consistent and on-time delivery of projects really is essential for WisDOT to effectively administer local programs and ensure that maximum program funding is available to be utilized on local projects. Next slide. Our plan right now is to release new program cycle project solicitations for STP, including the new STP local program component, local bridge, TAP, and CMAQ on Friday, June 6th, with an application deadline of September 30th, 2025 for CMAQ and October 31st, 2025 for STP, TAP, and local bridge. The LRIP solicitation is anticipated to be released in September 2025, but again, that date is dependent a little bit on when the state budget actually passes. If the budget is delayed, the LRIP cycle may also potentially be delayed. This new group of program cycles is intended to get us back to our regular schedule where we are soliciting for projects in the odd-numbered years and awarding projects in the even-numbered years. We will be sending out confirmation announcements when these local program cycle application materials are made available for all of the local programs. Next slide. So that is just a real brief overview of local programs. One last topic I wanted to touch on today revolves around a very important policy that we use in local programs to help administer projects after they have been awarded and scheduled. And this is guidance that may be more helpful for folks on the call that have some familiarity with local programs. And it is essentially the mechanism we use when project changes occur. Change management is not new. It's been around for a while. It's a process that maybe has a new focus, given some of the scheduling challenges and constraints that are associated with the recent large increases of both state and federal funding and the corresponding scheduling of large numbers of new projects. Change management is the WisDOT mechanism that we use to manage WisDOT program budgets and schedules. We introduced change management as a process for projects to apply for valid funding increases and schedule change requests. Because absolutely we recognize that things can happen during the design and construction process, like the 2020 COVID pandemic, for example, and projects can get delayed for various reasons, and this can make projects more complex and potentially more expensive. And it definitely creates a need for a mechanism that manages project changes programmatically, changes that are part of the previously approved project scope, and that allow us to manage all of local programs more effectively. Change management requests are to be submitted by WisDOT regional staff into WisDOT central office. These requests can cover funding increase requests, project end date or sunset extension requests, project schedule changes, and project drops and substitutions. Project funding increases are contingent on the ability to deliver the project within scope, and certain competitively awarded programs like TAP and CMAQ, for example, do not allow for cost increases. If you have a project that is requesting to go outside of its initially approved scope, you do have to demonstrate a valid engineering need. And if that project needs to be rescheduled, the project can potentially be rescheduled. However, and this is important, we have to move it into a fiscal year where there is available programmatic funding. And that ties really back into the program cycle scheduling restrictions that I mentioned on previous slides. Essentially, funding must be available in the new fiscal year that the project wants to move to, dependent on fiscal year and programmatic restrictions. Next slide, please. So I want to thank everybody today for your time and your interest in local programs. We've got a great lineup of speakers coming up after me. Here are some additional resources. I'm not going to go through all of them, but we do have some additional resources, some helpful resources that are included in the deck, including ADA standards, applicable federal code, information on construction standards. Next slide. And one more slide with some helpful resources for bicycle and pedestrian and non-traditional transportation project guidance. Next slide. And in case anyone needs it, once again, here is my contact information, along with the contact information for local program supervisor Tim Alushigan, and the link to the main WisDOT Local Assistance Programs webpage. Again, the slides will be made available after the conclusion of today's symposium. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to Northeast Region Local Program Manager Alex Dums and Statewide Local Program Project Manager Jodi Jarosinski, who will be giving an overview of local program delivery roles and responsibilities. Alex has 13 years of experience with WisDOT including 10 as a designer and 3 as the local program manager. He's a native of Marshfield, Wisconsin, and a graduate of both UW-Marshfield and UW-Platteville. Jodi is currently the statewide local program project manager in the Bureau of Project Development, and she has 20 years of experience in the transportation field with 18 years of that experience at WisDOT. Before her current role, she has worked in design, construction, operations, and as a regional local program project manager. She obtained her undergrad and master's in construction management from Marquette. Welcome, Alex and Jodi.
Thank you, Merrill. I would also like to start just by thanking everybody for tuning in and for your interest in the local program. We do enjoy working with our local partners, and we enjoy seeing the process of these projects going all the way from application to construction. Next slide, please. This first slide here, it shows the WisDOT website homepage. To get to this page, you can just Google WisDOT and it's easy to find. At that point, just hover over the doing business, local government. You can click on assistance programs and you can find the directory of all our local programs that Merrill just discussed. If you are interested in applying for a project in the 26 to 31 cycle, this is the best place to start. There's a lot of valuable information on this website and it really can assist you in filling out the application. If you still have questions at that point, please feel to reach out to the contacts listed on the application instructions, and we can assist in filling in the gaps. This leads to more productive discussions if the sponsor has done some work and research ahead of time prior to reaching out to WisDOT because the sponsor has a better understanding of the program. Next slide, please. So during this 26 to 31 cycle, there's a big emphasis on schedule and estimate. As projects upfront, they need to be properly scoped and estimated as well as possible to avoid costly change management requests and schedule changes down the line. This is just a reminder, as Merrill just discussed as well, that change management for additional funding for approved project is not guaranteed, and that all additional funds must be approved through the WisDOT change management process. The sponsor is responsible for submitting for approval by WisDOT. Please account for contingencies and inflation in your initial estimate. There are many unknowns at this stage of the project when you're just applying, so accounting for these potential costs, these unknown costs, is very important. Additionally, if a project won't be constructed for another few years, which is typical, it is important to account for inflation in each of those years so that you're not caught by surprise when 60%, 90% estimates come down the road. It is important to verify quantities and unit prices are reasonable and that all significant bid items are accounted for. Verify unit prices and pay special attention to the significant items such as asphalt, base aggregate, or say common excavation. Ensure they're all reasonably priced because if they are misestimated, they can obviously have a huge impact on the estimate. Next slide, please. So new this cycle also, this project scheduling tool is available for sponsors. The tool assists in creating a realistic timeline for projects. For example, requesting design in 1 year and construction in the next typically isn't feasible. This tool would show that, and it will show what a realistic timeline is for the design process. The tool accounts for various complexity factors that you encounter during design, such as real estate acquisition, environmental impacts, or potentially railroad coordination. And this tool adds time to the design to account for these tasks. The tool can be found on the WisDOT website just by searching Local Program Scheduling Tool. Next slide, please. This slide shows the local program stakeholders. So these are the primary stakeholders, but other stakeholders you could run into could include DNR, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and the Army Corps of Engineers, or railroads, for example. However, in terms of the funding, project oversight, project management, these are the primary stakeholders in local program projects. Next slide, please. So federal funding is a majority of funding on our local program projects, and this is provided by FHWA, or the Federal Highway Administration. Federal oversight for projects has been delegated by FHWA to WisDOT. FHWA can become involved in a project if they choose, but that is unusual in the programs we're discussing today. However, if that would occur, the WisDOT PM would let the sponsor know so that they are aware and let them know what potentially may be needed from them because of that. Next slide, please. Now, as far as WisDOT's role in projects, it starts with applications coming to WisDOT for review. We work with sponsors to assist with any questions about schedule, scope, or estimate. After the open application phase is over and applications are submitted, WisDOT awards and approves local program projects. After project approvals, WisDOT also reviews, approves, or denies change management requests for both funding requests and schedule change requests. WisDOT also provides guidance on following the FDM and environmental policy. WisDOT tracks progress of these scheduled projects, but is not responsible for quality control of these projects. It is expected that the local sponsor and consultant take on quality control of the project. Next slide, please. So this slide discusses the sponsor role in the project. Ultimately, the sponsor owns the project and is responsible for it. Scoping and estimate starts at application, and the sponsor needs to determine what kind of project they want. Once the project is approved, the sponsor takes lead in hiring a design consultant. The sponsor takes responsibility for the public involvement process, as the sponsor knows the most about the community. The design consultant can assist with this effort as well. The sponsor is responsible to ensure the project complies with regulations for the program that it's in, for following the FDM, and also for quality control. Additionally, if there's any real estate, utility, or railroad coordination, the sponsor is responsible for that coordination. Next slide, please. So this slide discusses the role of the design firm. The design firm is contracted by the sponsor. Please make sure they are on the WisDOT eligible roster to perform design work. Ensure that the firm is knowledgeable about WisDOT practices. And make sure the firm is familiar with the project type. For like a simple example, if you have a bridge project, ensure the firm is knowledgeable in bridge design. Ultimately, the goal is just to have a good plan that is biddable. Next slide. So this slide here shows what we call our approval designation matrix. This may be hard to read, and it's only part of the document, but the full document is available on WisDOT's website for closer inspection. This document will be sent to the LPA or local public agency when a project is approved, or when the state municipal agreement is sent. It outlines most of the activities and tasks associated with the local program project and who is responsible for the approval or review of that activity or task. It is very specific and detailed. It is important to review and understand these tasks once your project is approved. As mentioned before, this full document is available on our website. On the left side, you can see the in blue is WisDOT management. You move to the right, you get to more of the LPA or project sponsor tasks or responsibilities. The goal with this document is just to clearly show what tasks all project stakeholders are responsible for. Next slide, please. So MPOs and regional planning commissions, as Merrill described greatly before, are urbanized areas federally determined by population. MPOs have 50 to 200,000 population range, and TMAs have 200,000 or greater. Wisconsin has 14 urbanized areas which received an annual allocation of STP urban funding based on funds available as approved by the state biennial budget. MPOs approve their own projects within their areas when program funds are allocated by WisDOT. For example, STP urban and TAP programs receive allocations in the TMA areas, and in the MPO areas, they receive an STP urban allocation. TMAs and MPOs rank and select their own projects in both of these programs. As mentioned before, there's 14 of these areas in Wisconsin, 4 being TMAs with 200,000 or greater population, and 10 MPOs in the 50 to 200,000 population range. As far as it relates to your applications in WisDOT's programs, it's important to know whether or not you are in an MPO. The applications are the same whether you're within an MPO or not. The applications either way will go to the WisDOT region inbox for review. However, if the project is located within an MPO, the project must go to the Regional Planning Commission in addition to the WisDOT inbox. Next slide, please. As mentioned in the previous slide, MPOs, they're given annual allocations for STP urban, and the MPO decides how to distribute those dollars each year for projects. Now, for the urban areas between 5,000 and 50,000 and rural areas, they receive funding based on population and eligible centerline mileage, but they do not approve their projects. These projects are approved using a statewide formula for ranking projects. These projects are eligible for additional funds through change management. However, for small urbans, change management may be available, but it's based on specific engineering-based requests, and if funds are available, funding is not available, for example, if the project sponsor just underestimates the total cost of the project or change the scope of the project after approval. Now, SDP local projects are not eligible for change management, as these projects are discretionally awarded by a statewide committee, and they are capped at award. Next slide, please. On to SMA and authorization. So these are the first two steps once you have an approved project. The SMA is a financial document between WisDOT and the sponsor regarding the funding and scope of the project. The funding is then limited to that capped amount in the SMA unless a change management request is approved for additional funds. One more thing to mention with SMAs as well, if you solicit design consultants, please do not share the SMA with consultants, as we don't want consultants working towards the number that's shown in the SMA. We'd prefer to see the designer determine the design cost based on the project. Ideally, the numbers will be close between what's in the SMA and what the designer submits. Once we have assigned SMA, we do project authorization. Projects will have an ID, and this will allow us to charge costs to the project. You can start the process of designer selection, and they can be selected, but it's very important not to incur any costs until you get notification that the project is authorized. We cannot back pay for work that's been done prior to this authorization. So now I'm actually going to pass it on to Jodi. She's going to further dive into the delivery side of projects and take it from here.
Hello. As Alex mentioned earlier, one emphasis this year is scheduling. WisDOT has created a local program scheduling tool to help set schedules for design and construction. Things that normally might have a quick turnaround for municipal projects might take longer due to federal and state policy and procedures at WisDOT. This tool is to help the LPA understand the scheduling differences to set the project up for success. We'll walk through what the documents are that are creating the schedule. There is a separate presentation on the local program website for additional guidance on how to use the scheduling tool. Next slide. The first major document steps in the design process is to get assigned SMA, authorized project, and design consultant on board. Alex previously discussed SMA and project authorization. These items can take days to weeks to get approvals. For three-party design contracts, there are some steps that need to be taken that add time to this process as well. Qualification-based selection is required. A contract scoping meeting is held. Then there is the negotiation that WisDOT typically leads, and there are 4 groups that need to approve the consultant contract: the consultant, the region, the central office, and the LPA. This all takes time. It is best practice to estimate 6 months from the time of SMA signature to when a designer is under contract. The PS&E date has not changed, so if there's any hang-up on completing these steps, there will be less time for design. There will be a consultant presentation later on today. Next slide. The environmental document shows all the appropriate coordination has been completed, and the NEPA process is being followed. WisDOT does a very thorough review on environmental documents because we do not want to put your project at risk due to not complying with an environmental requirement. This is a legal document and needs to be able to support your project in court if a question is asked. It takes many months to do all the required coordination, such as reviewing ARC sites, potential ARC sites, historic sites, hazmat sites, cultural sensitive sites, state and federal endangered habitats, 4F and 6F land, public involvement, and much, much more. On a quick project, it takes 4 months to compile everything, and on a complex project, it can take 1 to 2 years. There'll be another presentation on the environmental process later today. Next slide. The next big document on the milestone or on the scheduling tool is the design study report. This is also referred to as a DSR. The DSR is a document that tells the story of the project and also documents the design decisions being made on the project. This is the place where justifications for not meeting standards are recorded, and any other items that aren't following a WisDOT policy. This document is an important one because a project cannot record a plat or start presenting real estate offers to property owner before it has been approved. Next slide. After the DSR comes the plat. The plat review and recording is the responsibility of the LPA and designer. To ensure no delays, make sure you take into account your plat approval process in your schedule. Order title work when the impacts are known. Title searches take time, and we don't want to see a delay in getting a recorded plat due to waiting on title searches. Keep utility interests in mind when choosing what type of plat you want on your project. Oops. Real estate. If hiring a consultant, make sure they're on WisDOT's LPA list. Once you have a consultant on board and a plat recorded, a startup meeting is needed to get everyone on the same page. This is with WisDOT, LPA, the designer, and the real estate agent. Research takes a couple of months, at least 2 months for appraisals to be created and approved by a review appraiser, and the LPA has to sign off on the initial offering price. Keep in mind timeframes needed for your approval process while setting up the project schedule. Negotiations. Property owners have right to get their own appraisal. Statutory timeframes of 60 days to get their own appraisal if they don't sign off on the offer. If it must go to condemnation, it is an additional 20 days for that process. Then there are the closing procedures. After everything is acquired, checks made, documents recorded, and WisDOT has to audit the real estate process for the project before it can be certified. General rule of thumb is 12 months for real estate. A project can take less or more depending on the project. There's more to come later today about plats in real estate. Next slide. The last dates on that scheduling tool are the PS&E and letting dates. Here are the PS&E and letting dates. WisDOT has 4 PS&E dates. This is when the final design and all requirements should be completed and turned in. Each PS&E has 3 corresponding letting dates. This is when the bids are open. You might wonder, why is there so much time between PS&E and letting? The time frame is for when the plan checkers are reviewing the project to ensure all requirements are met to advertise and let the project. WisDOT is also managing the state projects along with the local program projects, and we have to balance all the projects throughout the year to be let. We try our best to meet your desired letting date, but we also need to make sure we're balancing all the projects, so we might not be able to meet your desired time frame. We can only let so many projects per month. Next slide. The other estimate Alex mentioned was estimating. WisDOT does have some tools for people to use to help estimate your construction costs. On our website, we have tools for similar projects. So you can go and look in that project tool and find a comparable in your county or the type of work. There's an asphalt price map that is by location. It's the state of Wisconsin. You can hover over past projects to see what their asphalt prices were. There's a mobilization tool to help with you calculating what percentage should be accounted for mobilization. There's also templates out there to create bridge and estimates if you need a starting point. And there's historic bridge costs from BOS. And one other thing, when you're thinking about your construction cost, don't forget about construction oversight. Construction oversight can increase the project around 10 to 20% for the administering of the construction project out in the field. If you have any questions, reach out to your regional contacts. Okay, next slide. The other part of estimating cost is the design costs. We don't have as many tools for people to create design costs, but we do have one good resource, and that's using the Regional Local Program Manager. Here is a display of your contacts. They also are online. And if you have questions on how to estimate your design costs, please reach out to your regional contact shown here, and they can help you by looking at previous projects or help rationalize what's an appropriate design dollar. Okay, next slide. And for me and Alex, we want to thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, please reach out.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alex and Jodi. Next up, we are delighted to have with us today Andi Bill from the University of Wisconsin Local Technical Assistance Program. Andi is the director of Wisconsin LTAP, and she has a history of bringing research expertise to technology transfer initiatives through in-person and virtual webinars throughout Wisconsin and the entire United States. She is actively involved in the Transportation Research Board, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, the Association of Traffic Safety Information Professionals, and the American Society of Engineering Education. Welcome, Andi.
Thank you, Merrill. Thanks for having us on today. I appreciate everybody being here. I'm going to give a brief overview of the Wisconsin Local Technical Assistance Program. For those of you who have been on this call before or might have heard from us, we used to be called the Transportation Information Center. We rebranded about a year ago to align with our colleagues in other states. Next slide, please. So here in Wisconsin, we are one of 51 local technical assistance program centers nationwide. Every state has one, and Puerto Rico. Where this came about was Federal Highway created the LTAP program in 1982 to provide local agencies with information and training programs to address the maintenance and operations of local roadways and bridges. The Wisconsin was Transportation Information Center, and then also now as the LTAP Center, was founded in 1983, just a year after the program started. Next slide, please. So what do? We are here to help over the 1,900 units of local government in Wisconsin. Well, hopefully all of you that are watching this call today. So we are here to help counties, cities, villages, and towns. We work with WisDOT and the different divisions and departments within WisDOT to be able to help get training, technical assistance, tech transfer, and building partnerships. Next slide. So let's go ahead and cover that first one with regards to training. As Merrill mentioned, we do a variety of different training across the state. We do this for local street and highway agencies on topics that range from kind of the more quantitative side, the harder side with highway safety and work zone and flagger safety, pacer pavement condition rating and pavement maintenance and winter road maintenance. But we also do the softer side in terms of succession planning, knowledge management, and any of the other work that goes along with it. We do these webinars both virtually as well as doing on-site and in-person training upon request. So if you are listening to this call and you've heard from other folks today and you're like, man, I want some information more about, how do we put together grant applications or looking at that, please reach out and we can either do a training for you or we can provide some technical assistance. Next slide, please. So one of the programs that we do that's unique to Wisconsin is we have what's called the Public Works Supervisory Academy and the Public Works Management Institute certificates. Let's go a little bit further there. We'll go to that next slide, Ryan, when you have a chance when it comes back on. Go ahead and go one more forward. Thank you. So these are in cooperation with the Wisconsin chapter of the American Public Works Association. These are really helpful in both of your career and then moving up, and then they also are transferable among others. So the Public Works Supervisory Academy is a 9 one-day training course. This is approximately 54 hours. And then the Public Works Management Institute builds on that Public Works Supervisory Academy with an additional 5 1- to 2-day courses, so an additional 36 hours. The Public Works Management Institute is approved in the National APWA Institute's program. Next slide, please. We also have publications that are available. These are available on our website, as well as hard copies are available as well. So our most requested one is our work zone guidelines for construction maintenance and utility operations. We will be updating that in the upcoming years since there is a new manual on uniform traffic control devices. So we do have these available, but if you request them, I might just let you know that there will be an updated one probably in the next 1 to 2 years. We also have a flagger's handbook. We have lots of pavement surface evaluation rating manuals for asphalt, concrete, seal coat, gravel, brick, and block pavements and unimproved roads. And then we have a bulletin series on our website. This is giving information about how to set speed limits on your roadway, what to look at for barriers out there on your roadway, as other information too. Next slide, please. So one thing I want to mention about the PACER rating in Whistler. So pavement ratings are due by December 15th in the odd year. So that means this year, every local agency is going to have to provide information ratings on their roads that they have under their jurisdiction, under their ownership. This is helpful for us to be able to look at lots of different things and going along with it. We work in conjunction with WisDOT. We will be doing some online training this summer and maybe a couple in person as well. So kind of be on the lookout for that. If you aren't aware of who does your PACER rating within your jurisdiction, this might be a good time to reach out and just kind of ask some questions about who has done the rating before and then who's going to do it this year as we start to move forward. I don't want anybody to get caught on it last minute. So letting folks know about it now as we move forward. If you have any questions about what this is, you'll have our contact information at the end of this, so please reach out. Next slide, please. Within Whistler, one of the opportunities of having that correct PACER rating in there is that you can utilize the pavement management tools. There are algorithms in the background that kind of help say, okay, given these conditions and given the money that we have, where should we be putting our money? What type of rehabilitation or options should we be putting out on our roadways and looking at it? So you're hearing a lot about other tools that are available out there. This is another one to be able to help look at the system of your roadway from a pavement management side. If you have any questions about how this works out, you can contact us. Next slide. As we think about other data elements, right? So we've been hearing a lot about grant opportunities that are out there and other programs that are out there as well too. All of those revolve around data, right? So the Whistler and the pavement rating is definitely one of it. The other side is on that safety side of the house. So through another program at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, we have access to the crash data. So in a lot of the programs that are available, you'll need information with regards to crash data, the safety on your system and what you're looking at. This is available through the WisTrans portal system. There are a request that kind of that first arrow under data services is where you would be able to request a login information for the WisTrans portal or community maps crash data. This is going to give anybody that has a government email address information with regards to that. I'll kind of go through it. And then there's web applications. So you can go ahead and take a look at that. Next slide, please. So there's crash data. There's 2 available there. You'll see the top one, which is the crash data analysis tools. This is helpful in being able to kind of drill down a little bit more. It's kind of more on the engineering side of the house. The other option is community maps. You might have been seeing this before in other presentations or at your county traffic safety commissions. These are really helpful in being able to look at your system. Next slide, please. So as we think about the other options, so I mentioned training, I'll move into technical assistance. We are here to be able to answer questions and look at the information. So sometimes we get requests to say, hey, you know, how do I start filling out this grant application, or which grant is better for me to look at on that side. Sometimes it's I have a road that I'm not quite sure what to do with from a traffic safety standpoint. Would you mind looking at the crash data and kind of walking me through it with that? So we're able to provide answers, hopefully. If not, we will connect you with other resources that can help as well too. We definitely don't know everything, but we have a great system here that of all of our speakers today that can help us out with this. We have the most of our technical assistance is provided by phone or email. But we are able to, you know, depending on the situation, if it's nearby or if we're already in that area for some other training, we might be able to step out and look at your specific question. Next slide, please. In terms of partnerships, our LTAP works cooperatively with lots of partners, including the Wisconsin County Highway Association, the Wisconsin Town Association. We've been traveling across the state doing presentation about kind of road operations and the new manual and uniform traffic control devices through different new and returning town clerks, the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, the Wisconsin Chapter of American Public Works Association, the Institute of Transportation Engineer of Wisconsin, and many other, just to kind of help deliver training at events sponsored or hosted by partners, right? So if you are here and you're like, man, I send a lot of my staff to this conference and we would like to do some training on that, reach out. Maybe we can be there and doing some training on that to have some synergy between the different groups, because I know it's hard to get people out of the office. We're all busy, we're all a little short staffed. And so if we can try to provide some of that synergy and combining those trainings together, it's really helpful for everybody. At least I think so. Next slide, please. Here's our contact information. We have a toll-free number. We have kind of a general email address, which is there on our website. And then I wanted to put down my personal contact information there. So you see my name, my phone number, and then my email address associated there. So please reach out if there's anything that we can do to help make sure that your roads are operating smoothly and safely. Thank you very much, Merrill, for this opportunity.
Great, thanks, Andi. Next up, we have NetKinetics Information Services Project Manager, William Arnold, and TAP Statewide Program Manager, Steph Mertens, who will be giving a short overview of the various online platforms that are utilized by the various local programs, with a special emphasis on our new TAPWeb online application process. William Arnold joined NetKinetics in February of 2017 as a project manager. He has a professional project management certification and more than 30 years of experience in the IT industry, developing software and managing technical projects, including multiple online applications for WisDOT local programs. Steph Mertens joined the local program and finance section in September 2023 as the TAP and CMAQ statewide program manager. Prior to joining WisDOT, Stephanie attended and received her master's degree from the UW-Madison La Follette School of Public Affairs. She has a diverse professional background spanning state government, nonprofit fundraising, event planning, and consulting. Welcome, William and Steph.
Thanks, Merrill. Hi, everyone. My name is Steph Mertens, and I'm the Transportation Alternatives Program Statewide Program Manager here at WisDOT. Today, I'm joined by William Arnold of NetKinetics. Next slide, please. Over the next couple of minutes, William and I will provide an overview of the partnership between NetKinetics and Wisconsin DOT, as well as share information about the Transportation Alternatives Program and the newly built TAPWeb platform where interested applicants can apply for funding. Now I'll turn it over to William to share a bit more about NetKinetics and the work they've done with the local program section to enhance the applicant experience for the various local programs administered. Next slide.
Thank you, Steph, and thank you, Merrill, for the opportunity to share a little bit about NetKinetics and to express our deep appreciation for the partnership we've built with WisDOT. We're a company rooted in La Crosse, Wisconsin, with over 20 years of experience building custom business software. From the beginning, our focus has never been just about writing code. It's been about solving problems and creating tools that make our partners work easier, more efficient, and more impactful. What defines us isn't just what we do, but how we do it. We value hard work, transparency, and building long-term relationships. That Midwestern mindset of doing right by people and following through is a part of our DNA. Our relationship with WisDOT began in 2017 with WebTAS. That project set the tone. A strong collaboration, a shared commitment to public service, and a mutual respect that continues to grow. Since then, we've expanded into new areas like LRIP and now TAPWeb, always aiming to listen first, respond thoughtfully, and deliver meaningful solutions. We're proud of what we've accomplished together, and even more excited about what's ahead. Thank you for welcoming us as a part of the team. Next slide. Through the WebTAS project, we were honored to take on a critical challenge, replacing the legacy system used to calculate and distribute general transportation aids and county highway aids across the state. In just over a year, we designed and delivered a web-based application that today manages the disbursement of over $562 million in aid funds to local governments. This was a significant responsibility, and our approach was rooted in clarity, reliability, and user empowerment. From the outset, our focus was to simplify the interface and streamline the workflow so users could navigate complex financial processes with confidence. We reduced administrative overhead by building automation into areas like payment notifications and budget calculations. We also ensured seamless integration with systems like PeopleSoft and included a built-in help system to support users when they needed it most. WebTAS went live with the 2019 budget cycle, and since then, we've continued to evolve the system. We've added support for supplemental towns, aids limitation adjustments, and made targeted enhancements based on real-world feedback. One standout feature for WebTAS, something we're particularly proud of, is the workflow we developed. Next slide. This visual shows the workflow we built into WebTAS. It guides users through each step of the aids disbursement process, helping to ensure accuracy, clarity, and consistency. It's simple but effective. Green indicates a task is complete, blue means it's ready to be worked on, and gray, not pictured, signals that a task is waiting on something else to finish. This intuitive design gave users a clear sense of where they were in the process and what needed to happen next. It reduced confusion, improved efficiency, and was so well received that we incorporated similar logic into other systems we built. One of those was our next collaboration with WisDOT, the Local Roads Improvement Program, or LRIP. Next slide. Building on the success of WebTAS, WisDOT brought us in to modernize another important system, this time the Local Roads Improvement Program, or LRIP. Our task was to replace a legacy process for managing grant requests, approvals, and funding allocations across entitlement, discretionary, and supplemental programs. These are critical dollars that go directly into maintaining and improving local roads throughout the state. In just under 2 years, we developed a full web-based platform that now supports the entire LRIP lifecycle, from initial requests through approvals and reimbursement. The system disperses over $174 million in grant funding to local governments with greater speed, accuracy, and transparency than ever before. We approached LRIP with the same core principles that guided WebTAS: a simplified user interface, a streamlined process to reduce friction, a hierarchical approval structure for clarity and control, automated email notifications to keep stakeholders informed, and seamless integration with Whistler, enabling geospatial insight into project locations. The system went live with the 2020-2021 biennium, and since then we've continued to refine and enhance it, listening closely to user feedback and adapting the platform to meet real-world needs. LRIP is another great example of what's possible when collaboration, shared goals, and good technologies combine. Next slide, please. One of the more exciting milestones in LRIP project was our integration with Whistler, WisDOT's Wisconsin Information System for Local Roads. As a part of the grant request process, we leveraged Whistler's API to return on-route, at-route, and toward-route data, allowing us to precisely identify the location of proposed improvements. Using that data, we dynamically return a map showing where the project is situated, bringing context and clarity right into the application workflow. This was our first API integration with WisDOT, and it laid the groundwork for how we approach real-time data visualizations in future applications. And speaking of which, after LRIP, our collaboration evolved again to focus on TAPWeb, the core of today's discussion. And with that, I'll turn it over to Steph Mertens, who will walk you through how TAPWeb is helping modernize the Transportation Alternative Program. Next slide.
Thanks, William. The Transportation Alternatives Program, or TAP, is a federally funded program that supports local sponsors across the state who are interested in funding smaller-scale transportation projects using federal transportation alternatives set-aside contract authority and state budget authority. The TAP program focuses on human-powered utilitarian trips with an emphasis on safety for non-drivers, so think walkers, rollers, and bicyclists. TAP also includes funding for Safe Routes to School projects, which includes building paths to help school children travel to and from school safely via walking or biking, as well as in-school programming, which teaches children or students from kindergarten to grade 12 how to ride and travel safely via bike, as well as improve their own biking skills. As a federally funded program, awarded TAP projects are reimbursed up to 80% of the total eligible project. The local sponsor is then responsible for the remaining 20%. Next slide, please. The list of eligible sponsors can be found on this slide. A few to call out include local governments, school districts, tribal governments, and nonprofit entities responsible for the administration of local transportation safety programs. If you have questions about sponsor eligibility, I recommend reaching out to your WisDOT regional office. The contact information for the regions was shared earlier in the symposium and can also be found at the bottom of WisDOT's TAP website. Next slide, please. Eligible projects for TAP include planning studies, infrastructure projects, such as the construction or enhancement of bicycle and pedestrian facilities, and Safe Routes to School non-infrastructure projects, like the in-school programming mentioned earlier. TAP's a competitive program, and the selection of awarded projects is based on the ranking of a project's perceived planning, its utility and connection, the community benefits, such as environmental, safety, historical, and public health impact, and the history of sponsor success if applicable. WisDOT also works to ensure TAP funding is spread across the entire state to the best of our ability. Under Wisconsin state statute, all awarded TAP projects must commence within 4 years of their award date. This includes both design and construction, and unfortunately, there isn't really any wiggle room for extensions. Next slide, please. New to the 2026-2030 application cycle is the rollout of TAPWeb, an online platform where applicants can submit their applications, track their application's progress, reference past applications, and communicate directly with WisDOT's regional offices. Next slide, please. Once an applicant has registered for TAPWeb, they'll be able to log in and find the dashboard as their landing page. This landing page is where an applicant can start and view their applications, view their work queue, upload their training certificate, and find additional resources. Recognizing that in some instances, multiple people from an organization may work on one application, TAPWeb was developed to allow multiple profiles to the same organization. It's our hope that this will foster collaboration and streamline the application process for the user. Next slide, please. I want to emphasize here that the TAPWeb application questions remain the same as the previous Word doc versions. The main differences are that now it's electronic. Applicants can now upload the attachments, such as their local resolutions of support, line item budgets, maps, etc., directly to the application. And in some cases, questions have been automated, such as the general budget calculations. You may notice that some questions have been reorganized or consolidated into different sections, especially if you're comparing it to a previously submitted Word version, but the substance of the questions remain largely the same. Also, without getting too in-depth, the application was developed to be dynamic and responsive to previously answered questions. Therefore, only questions that are deemed relevant to the type of project selected will be shown during the application process. This means that if you're requesting funding for the design and construction of a multi-use path that's connecting a community to its downtown business district, you won't be asked for school demographics. And if you're requesting funding for a Safe Routes to School non-infrastructure project, then you won't be asked about possible railroad interference. And finally, if an applicant's unable to use the online platform to submit an application, the fillable Word doc version will still be available. It's still required that the application is submitted electronically via email, and it will follow the same time frame for submission. The version of the Word version of the application will be available on the WisDOT TAP website in the coming weeks. Next slide, please. There are a number of benefits that come from the creation of TAPWeb, most notably the improvements to the application process and the overall convenience and accessibility to the user. This platform was created with the intention of improving the user experience for all involved in the TAP program. An applicant can now work directly in the application with weigh-in from others from their organization. They can track where the application is in the overall process. They can save time by duplicating and updating a prior application, which this is particularly helpful for those who are reapplying for continued projects like Safe Routes to School in-school programming, or those who may not have been awarded in a prior cycle but want to apply for the same project again. Also, as mentioned earlier, an applicant can ensure mathematical accuracy and now upload attachments, and they can also keep track of any unanswered questions or missing pieces to their application. And then after submitting for regional office review, applicants will now be able to see any comments or suggestions that the regional staff may have directly to where it is in the application. Next slide, please. In the coming days, the WisDOT TAP website will be updated with the following resources to assist applicants interested in applying. It is highly recommended that interested parties review the program guidelines, application instructions, TAPWeb manual, and the sponsor's guide to ensure full understanding of the funding opportunity. We anticipate hosting a user webinar for the new TAPWeb application portal. Please watch for future communication regarding that timing. Next slide, please. Thank you for your time today. If you have any further questions about TAP or the work that NetKinetics does, please do feel free to reach out.
Okay, great. Thanks, William and Steph. We have reached the point in the agenda where we're set to take a break. I know this has been a lot of information so far that we've covered this morning, so we want to give people a good chance to stretch their legs. Why don't we take a break here and we can come back at 11:05. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Next up, Kris Squires will give an overview of bicycle and pedestrian considerations on local facilities. Next slide. Kris is the statewide bicycle and pedestrian coordinator here at WisDOT, providing statewide leadership and serving as a key advisor to department management for issues concerning bicycle and pedestrian planning and policy. He also manages the WisDOT standalone curb ramp improvement program. Previously, he provided technical and policy guidance for hundreds of projects as the WisDOT Southeast Region Bicycle and Pedestrian Coordinator. Welcome, Kris.
Hi, everybody, and thanks, Merrill. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Can get started. Next slide, please. So as Merrill mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about bicycle and pedestrian facilities today. The presentation will cover three main areas: programs and policies, planning and design resources, and safety, education, and outreach. Next slide, please. There are both existing state and federal laws and policies that focus on incorporating bicycling and walking accommodations so that they are integrated into our transportation networks. There's an emphasis on creating connected networks between origins and destinations along the network. Transportation projects provide opportunities to address needs, gaps, and deficiencies within that network for bicyclists and pedestrians. Next slide, please. As you develop your projects, you'll want to make sure that you're evaluating options for biking and walking. Small improvements can make a big difference. There's sometimes flexibility available in the design of the roadway. Examples could include modifying the width and or number of lanes to provide space to incorporate bike and pedestrian accommodations. Other options can include incorporating crosswalks and safety countermeasures as feasible within the scope of your project. A decision to not provide bicycle or pedestrian accommodations should not be the rule. Look at every project as an opportunity to make improvements for biking and walking. Document the alternatives, evaluation, and decision making as you work through the design. Document those evaluations as you go. Next slide, please. At WisDOT, we have various planning resources available to assist you with your projects. We look at regional and local levels for relevant transportation and other plans and policies that are in place. Some communities also have complete streets and other policies that may influence the design decisions on your projects. There are also state and national design guides that provide guidance regarding bicycle and pedestrian design best practices. Examples include the AASHTO bicycle and pedestrian guides, which were both updated relatively recently, and various guides from NACTO. Projects that are defined as alterations also need to address ADA accessibility requirements. Curb ramps have been a particular point of emphasis in recent years. Information in the WisDOT Facilities Development Manual, Chapter 1146, provides guidance regarding what project concepts are defined as an alteration per ADA for which you would be required to address ADA requirements. FDM 1146 also establishes that all projects, regardless of the improvement type, should provide opportunities to evaluate alternatives for bicycle and, actually, rephrase that. All projects provide opportunities to evaluate alternatives for incorporating bicycle and pedestrian facilities. Next slide, please. Okay. WisDOT also provides a variety of safety education and outreach materials. For example, WisDOT provides access to crash data via the Community Maps website. On that site, you can filter specifically for bicycle and pedestrian crashes. We also provide WisDOT-led training as well as other training in conjunction with regional partners. WisDOT regional bicycle and pedestrian coordinators can be a starting point at the regional level for answering questions and providing guidance on best practices for bicycle and pedestrian design. A directory to our regional coordinators can be provided at the link on the slide there. The WisDOT Bureau of Transportation Safety also has a variety of safety and educational materials available. And we can move to the next slide, and that concludes my presentation. Okay, so I'll just say there's my contact information and links to our travel by bike and travel as pedestrian web pages on the WisDOT website. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Kris. Next up, we have Colleen Hosley and Sara Husen from WisDOT's Bureau of Planning and Economic Development, who will be giving an update on planning program and requirements here at WisDOT. Colleen serves as the department's planning section chief. She has a degree in urban and regional planning from the University of Wisconsin and has 13 years experience as a transportation planner in the public sector, including previous roles with the WisDOT Southwest region, the Greater Madison MPO, and the Rockford Metropolitan Agency for Planning. Sara is a urban and regional planner in the department who serves as a liaison for the Greater Madison MPO and the Chippewa-Eau Claire MPO. She also manages the statewide transportation improvement program and works on statewide planning projects for the department. Her prior public sector experience also includes work with Dane County, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, the City of Edgerton, and Rock County. Welcome, Colleen and Sara.
Thank you, Merrill. Good morning. We can go to the next slide, please. All right, the planning section in the Division of Transportation Investment Management is responsible for coordinating and developing statewide plans, including Connect 2050, the state's long-range transportation plan. The planning section also administers and oversees several planning programs, including the statewide Transportation Improvement Program, or STIP, and approves the Transportation Improvement Programs, or TIPs, developed by metropolitan planning organizations across the state. The planning section also provides technical assistance to local governments to produce plans and policies addressing long-range multimodal needs in coordination with our WisDOT region planning partners. Next slide, please. Connect 2050 is a policy-based document that will guide WisDOT's decision-making about changes and investments to our transportation system over the next 30 years. The policies identify what WisDOT would like to accomplish, and other WisDOT efforts will identify how and when they will be accomplished through specific projects or improvements to our transportation system. It is the umbrella providing guidance for other modal plans, such as the State Freight Plan and State Rail Plan. As a statewide plan, it helps guide decision-making for the entire state of Wisconsin, from our dense urban areas to sparsely populated rural areas. Next slide. There are 8 overarching goals identified in Connect 2050 as shown here, including focusing on partnerships, increasing options, connections, and mobility for people and goods, and maximizing transportation safety. Next slide. Connect 2050 takes a performance-based decision-making approach. Performance-based decision-making combines target setting and trend analysis with measuring and tracking progress towards meeting those targets. When WisDOT measures progress, we can identify what we are doing well and what areas need improvement, prioritizing constructive actions. We track performance in 2 ways. We track the federally required transportation performance measures, as well as MAPS performance measures through the MAPS Performance Improvement Program. Additionally, MPO tips, which we will get to in just a moment, are also required to track progress with federal transportation performance measures in terms of what projects are programmed within their tips. Next slide. The WisDOT Plans webpage at www.wisdotplans.gov is the online repository for all of our statewide transportation plans, including supporting plans and planning documents related to the implementation of our modal plans, such as the Wisconsin Resilience Improvement Plan, Carbon Reduction Strategy, and Wisconsin Highway Railway Grade Crossing Safety Action Plan. The WisDOT Plans page is also where you can find out more about opportunities for public involvement for plans under development. Next slide. I'll now hand it over to Sara Husen to cover information about the statewide Transportation Improvement Program and requirements for MPO tips.
Thank you, Colleen. Continuing on with WisDOT planning, the statewide Transportation Improvement Program, also known as the STIP, is set forth as a requirement for state DOTs to implement and develop as indicated by 23 USC sections 134 to 35, and also implementation strategies by 23 CFR 450. And in quotes, it states, the statewide transportation plan and the Transportation Improvement Program, STIP, developed for each state shall provide for the development and integrated management and operation for transportation systems and facilities, including accessible pedestrian walkways, bicycle transportation facilities, and intermodal facilities that support intercity transportation, including intercity buses and intercity bus facilities and commuter van pool providers that will function as an intermodal transportation system for the state. Next slide, please. So the contents of the STIP and its purpose is that it provides a prioritized project list of WisDOT and local program projects within the next 4 calendar years. Presently, the 25 to 28 equals the 4-year STIP period that we are currently in. The STIP also provides opportunity to coordinate with metropolitan planning organizations, MPOs, which I will get to in a little bit here, and also local governments that work in coordination with them. STIP also provides an opportunity for public involvement in the projects that are programmed within these communities. And it also provides financial plans, fiscal constraint, regional project lists, and also program summaries. Next slide. So which projects are actually required to be in the STIP? First and foremost, federally funded highway and transit projects are included and need to be included within the STIP. And also regionally significant projects also need to be included in the STIP. And what constitutes regional significance is also clarified in 23 CFR 450-104. And the STIP itself is amended on a monthly basis on or after the 20th, based on the processing time and weekend timelines for a 15-day public comment period. Next slide, please. The STIP has its own dedicated web page on wisconsindot.gov, in which you can find approvals, information on the public comment period, the STIP 4-year interactive map, and other information that is coming to date. Next slide, please. So as mentioned before, metropolitan planning organizations, MPOs, there are 14 of them in the state of Wisconsin that also share responsibility for transportation planning in 17 metropolitan areas. WisDOT continues to work closely with MPOs to ensure that they are coordinating and also developing comprehensive approaches to local and regional state transportation planning in these urbanized areas. Next slide, please. So each metropolitan planning organization is required under 23 CFR 450, 326, and also instructed by 49 USC 530 to develop a transportation improvement program, which is also known as a TIP, a list of upcoming transportation projects covering a period of at least 4 years. And so just to get the actual quoted language, the MPO, in cooperation with the states and any affected public transportation operator, shall develop a TIP for the metropolitan planning area. The TIP shall reflect the investment priorities established in the current metropolitan transportation plan and shall cover a period of, again, no less than 4 years, be updated at least every 4 years, and be approved by the MPO and the governor. Next slide, please. The TIP purpose and contents include also a listing of federally funded transportation projects proposed to be carried out by state and local governments over those next 4 years, as mentioned before, and also the 4-year prioritized project list, which mirrors the STIP in that it both contains both capital and non-capital projects, and like mentioned before, is developed and maintained by the MPO. Next slide, please. The TIP also undergoes routine amendments, approvals, and authorizations similar to the STIP. Regions must ensure WisDOT and local road program projects are accurately included in the TIP via a TIP amendment. New projects or project changes must be also approved by their MPO policy boards. And also these policy board approvals must also be sent to WisDOT planning for secretary approval when processing TIP amendments. WisDOT also approves these TIP amendments and forwards them to FHWA and FTA for further authorizations. Next slide, please. And here is also some contact information from both the planning section chief, myself, in terms of management of the STIP, and then also our statewide MPO RPC coordinator, Matt Sorensen. And that is it.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Colleen and Sara. All right, next up, Roselynn Bittorf will be giving an overview on the Transportation Economic Assistance, or T program. Roselynn is the WisDOT T program manager. Prior to joining WisDOT, she managed one of the largest categorical aid programs for the Department of Public Instruction. managing over $479 million to support special education programs throughout the state. She has over 17 years in grant management experience, overseeing both federal and state grants, and received her MBA from UW-Madison in 2015. Welcome, Roselynn.
Thank you, Merrill, for that nice introduction. My name is Roselynn Bittorf. I'm the program manager for the Transportation Economic Assistance Program, also known as the T program. Today is just really a high-level overview about the T program. So next slide. So what is the T program? It's a grant program that supports business development by funding transportation improvements that are needed to secure jobs in the state. Next slide. And the process begins with a governing body, such as a city, town, village, or county, who's willing to serve as the applicant or the sponsor of the grant. And they partner with a business located within that governing body who is in need of a transportation improvement in order to create or retain jobs. Next slide. So at a high level, there are 4 eligibility requirements that an applicant must meet to be eligible for the T program. So if an applicant can't even meet one of these eligibility requirements, then this isn't the right project to be funded with T funding. Next slide. So eligibility requirement number 1, the economic development project is unlikely to occur in Wisconsin unless the transportation facility improvement is built. So we have 2 things here. How do we define economic development project, and what are examples of transportation facility improvements? Next slide. Economic development project is defined in statute as a business development that directly retains jobs or increases the number of jobs in the state. Next slide. And our statute goes on to give examples of transportation facility improvements. And you can see from this slide, it can pretty much be anything: road, rail, harbor, or airport. But with that being said, there are a few caveats. Next slide. So while it can be any of those things, it must be open to the public for travel and come under either jurisdiction or ownership of public authority. So no driveways, private roads, parking lots, or parking lanes are eligible for T funding. For a rail project, that would require the business to grant a track easement to the local government on the business land. So getting back to kind of what eligibility requirement number 1 is saying, it's saying without this transportation improvement, you are unable to make job creation or job retention happen. Next slide. Eligibility requirement number 2, the transportation facility improvement is not likely to occur without the grant. So how does the applicant prove this out? Next slide. So the applicant or the sponsor of the grant must demonstrate why they are unable to provide 100% of the funding for the project by passing a resolution acknowledging the need for the additional T funds and agreeing to abide to the terms and conditions of the T grant. Next slide. This also means that if a governing body intends on using T funding for a project, they should not begin any ground disturbance within the right-of-way or advertise the transportation project's construction, because doing so puts them in conflict with eligibility requirement number 2. You can't pass a resolution saying without the additional funding, we're unable to make the project happen while you're already starting construction on your road or rail spur. However, it does mean that the governing body can get started on things that are not part of the T funding and not within the right-of-way, which would include things like the building or the parking lot. Next slide. Eligibility requirement number 3, the business development meets the definition of an economic development project set forth in statutes. So let's revisit that definition again. Next slide. Economic development project is defined in statute as a business development that directly retains jobs or increases the number of jobs in this state. Next slide. So what this is saying is that You can meet this requirement either by creating new jobs or retaining jobs. If your application is based on creating new jobs, the requirement is met by creating jobs that would have otherwise not been created if the transportation improvement did not happen. If your application is based on retaining jobs, you're meeting the requirement by retaining jobs that would have otherwise been let go if your transportation improvement did not happen. Next slide. Now, the job timeline is based on a 7-year timeline with the clock starting at the point of which the project agreement is signed. So if your application was based on creating new jobs, 3 years after signing the project agreement, you are reporting to WisDOT how many jobs you have indeed created. And then 4 years after that, you're reporting of those jobs you created, how many have you retained? If your application was based on retaining jobs, then you're reporting to WisDOT at the 3-year and the 7-year snapshot how many jobs you have retained. Next slide. Eligibility requirement number 4. Construction of the transportation facility improvement would be scheduled to begin within 3 years of the date when a grant is awarded for the improvement. Next slide. So to explain this a little better, I'm going to back our timeline up even more. So an applicant submits their materials to WisDOT, and I'm reviewing those materials along with other point staff at the DOT. Once we determine your materials are satisfactory, we route it to the secretary for final review and approval. And once the secretary signs off on your grant, that is your grant award. So this eligibility requirement is saying you must begin construction within 3 years after the secretary signing that grant award. Then depending if your project was road or rail, I'm handing it to either one of the DOT regions for a road project or to our rail and harbor team for a rail project. And at that point, they put together the project agreement with you, which will outline the terms and conditions, the responsibilities of the parties, and the scheduling of the transportation improvement. Once all the parties have signed that project agreement, that is when the clock starts ticking for job creation and job retention. Next slide. So the funding that an applicant ultimately receives is based on the following criteria, with the applicant receiving the lowest of the two. So that would be based on 50% of T eligible cost or $5,000 per job created or retained, again, whichever is the lower of the two amounts. So with that being said, I am nearing the end of my presentation, and I always like to recap things in a creative way to help you remember it. So if you recognize this tune, you can hum it to yourself, but I don't sing. So next slide. Here's a story of a municipality who is looking to expand their industrial park. All they had was empty land and a site plan, but the future was looking somewhat stark. Next slide. Here's a story of a business who had a transportation structure need. A way to move their product was their dream, but due to lack of funding, they had no lead. Next slide. Till the one day when the municipality learned of T funding, and they knew it was much more than a hunch, that they must somehow connect with this business. So they completed the T grant application packet bunch. Next slide. Now the T partnership is off and running as the T grant has provided resources to grow. The funding helped the business expand further, and the municipality has a successful project to show. Next slide. Thank you for your time today, and here is links to the information that I talked about as well as my contact information.
Okay, great. Thanks, Roselynn. We'll all have that song stuck in our head all day now. Next, Mitch Patoka will be giving a presentation on consultant contracting. Mitch is the consultant services engineer for the Bureau of Project Development Consultant Services section. He coordinates WisDOT's consultant solicitations, provides policy guidance, ensures compliance with federal and state regulations, and provides information to assist with management of WisDOT's consultant program. Mitch is a native of Wisconsin and a graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Welcome, Mitch.
Sorry, I was double muted there. All right, yeah, so I am Mitch Patoka with the Bureau of Project Development Consultant Services section in WisDOT's central office, and today we'll be talking about consultant contracting. Next slide, please. So consultant contracting, we will go through the solicitation of services, which includes the scope of services, outlining what our engineers will be doing, the estimate for those engineering services, the solicitation process, which includes a special process for smaller contracts known as a small purchase solicitation, and a roster notification to get more competition, and then the selection of our consultants. Next slide, please. So when developing a solicitation, this is sometimes also called a request for qualifications. It will include a general overview of the project and then a more specific description of the services that the engineering firm will be doing to create the plans and specifications for the contractors to build. It will also include the key requirements that the consultants will need to be able to perform to deliver the project, and those key requirements will later form the basis of our selection. Next slide, please. So to begin with, before we put our solicitation out to consultants for them to review and possibly submit their qualifications, we'll begin with our design fee estimate for the engineering services. This will have additional detail beyond just a percentage of the construction costs that may have been used to put together the initial application. By adding additional detail to that estimate, it will aid in the negotiations with consultants later on. This estimate will have the different tasks of the project broken out, and then also specify the types of classified people who will be performing those tasks. So for instance, we will consider different tasks such as designing the roadway, designing the sidewalk, performing survey, and designing storm sewer. And by considering each of those tasks individually, we can come up with a better estimate of what those engineering services are going to cost. Also note that if you do not do this particularly often, consultant costs have generally increased with recent times. Next slide, please. So the scope of services has the overview of the project with the description of services that the engineering firm will be performing. Those key requirements are going to include any special things that are coming up with the project. So, experience with, special drainage considerations, if you're going to be replacing, say, sanitary or drinking water types of things. And if you're concerned about the amount of time that it takes to evaluate consultants, you can limit the total response length of materials that consultants can submit. 8 pages is probably about the minimum. It allows you to get a good idea of the consultant's capabilities, but still keep your review time reasonable. Next slide, please. So then the solicitation process, after we have written our scope of services and done our estimate, is outlined in federal regulation as well as WisDOT's Facilities Development Manual. 3 main ways about going through this are an email to the entire WisDOT roster of eligible engineering consultants, an email to a predetermined municipal roster, and then the small purchase process. Next slide, please. So a small purchase is a special case where the estimate for the engineer and the initial contract are less than $200,000. Please note that any amendments cannot have a total cost exceed $250,000. If they do, we need special approval from FHWA, and we do risk losing any federal funds that have been participating. To do this, you will need to obtain positive responses from at least 3 consultants. So this means that you can't just contact 3 consultants, and if only one responds that they're able to do it, that you have completed the process. You have to continue contacting consultants until you have at least 3 that you can rank. And if you do not obtain at least 3, additional justifications may be required when you submit your selection. Next slide, please. So a roster solicitation is what WisDOT recommends. You can obtain a list of firm contacts from WisDOT or your local program contact. If you're concerned about the amount of time you're going to need to review all of your consultant submissions, right now WisDOT for our roadway projects is generally receiving interest from about 20 consultants per roadway design project, and generally for local program projects you're going to receive fewer than that. So you should be getting, even with a WisDOT notification, you'll be getting good competition, but the review process still shouldn't be overwhelming. A municipal roster may also be used. It must include at least 10 firms, and that roster must be open to all consultants wishing to join it. So you can't do things like limit the consultants to just those within a 50-mile radius. Next slide, please. So after we publish our solicitation, consultants will submit their qualifications to us, and they will be evaluated based on a qualification-based selection process. This is outlined in federal law known as the Brooks Act, and that specifies that when procuring engineering services, we may look at only the qualifications of the interested consultants and cannot consider cost. So our evaluation of the consultants will be based on the criteria that we set out in that scope of services, their ability to perform or design the project based on that description, and then judged against those key requirements that we laid out. So when you're putting together your selection committee, that must include at least 3 people, the chairperson and 2 other representatives of the municipality. It cannot include any consultants. So if you are contracted with a consultant to be your municipal engineer, that person will not be able to be on the selection committee. So WisDOT does use a qualitative evaluation process. So within their, say, those key requirements, we don't assign people number values on their ability to do it. We look at more as a more qualified, qualified, less qualified, and consider how all of those come together to determine our most qualified consultants. And as you're going through this, please make sure to document the key differences for the ranking of your consultants. Next slide, please. So conflict of interest, just a few things to keep in mind. If you have a municipal engineer who is a consultant, that firm cannot compete for design engineering. The same firm cannot do a study and design for an independent bridge study. And then additional conflict of interest guidance has just been added to our latest FDM publication. Next slide, please. So the selection approval is done on a form called WisDOT's 1515 form. Please make sure to review that form for correctness and completeness. This will just eliminate some back and forth between you and WisDOT and make sure that that selection is approved in a timely manner. A few things to keep in mind there. When considering the description of work, it doesn't have to be very long, just enough for the person at WisDOT approving the selection to have an idea about what the project is about. Next slide, please. And then once that firm is there, if there are fewer than 3 firms provided on the form that were ranked, you'll be asked for additional justification. If you have already sent it out to the entire WisDOT roster, that is sufficient. But if it was sent to a smaller group of work, you'll have to document the number of firms that you contacted, the reason that the firms who didn't respond chose not to pursue the work, and it is possible that if there are fewer than 3, you may have to resolicit. And so with that, that will conclude my presentation today. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mitch. Okay, we have reached the point where we can give everybody a chance to go out and grab something to eat. So let's all take a break, and we will return right at 12:30. Thanks, everyone. All right, welcome back, everyone. It takes a lot of people to put together the local program symposium every 2 years. So I want to take a moment right at the start of the afternoon session to recognize 2 individuals who have been working a lot today, but not actually presenting. First, our BIL main point of contact, Ryan Whitehead, is the individual who's advancing all the slides for all of the presenters today. And additionally, Dan Arneson from the Office of Public Affairs is providing technical support, as he does for so many of our local program webinars. So I wanted to say thank you for those 2 individuals for their invaluable efforts in assisting to the delivery of today's symposium. Next slide. So we'll start the afternoon off with a presentation from Tanya Iverson from WisDOT's Program Finance section, who's going to be giving an overview of local program federal funding rules. Tanya is a fiscal analyst in the Program Finance section in the Bureau of State Highways, and previously has a great deal of experience from working in the local program section as the TAP and CMAQ statewide program manager. So welcome, Tanya.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. The folks in local program are, I think you need to hear me. The folks in local program are primarily responsible with applying federal and state funds to your specific projects right around the time that you will need to start charging funding or start charging costs to the project. We apply both federal and state funds. But for local program, most of you all have federal funds on your project, and federal funds pose some unique opportunities. So today we're going to talk about what federal funding means in terms of issues that they can cause for your projects and attributes that they share, regardless of the kind of funding that you get. So the next slide. Oh, we're already there. Federal aid funds are generally distributed to states using formulas specified in federal law, and these funds enable a state like WisDOT to enter into agreements with the Federal Highway Administration, or FHWA, for what will ultimately be reimbursements from the Highway Trust Fund. The funds distribution is provided to each state through programs that focus on key areas like STP or TAP or local bridge or CMAQ. And as you've heard earlier, even within those key areas, funds are further distributed into specific geographies like STP urban or STP local, or specific emphasis areas like local bridge, off-system bridges. However, regardless of the bucket or type of federal funding you are receiving, all of these funds share several attributes. And those attributes are that the funding is made available for specific projects. It is not federal funding that just comes to your local unit of government. It is funding that comes to you for a specific reason. Funding is as reimbursement. You don't get the money up front. It is only after you've done the work. And that funding is only made available for a limited time. Next slide. So today we are going to talk about what those 3 attributes mean for your project. So for project specific, projects are authorized with a specific funding code, project limits, and work types. And when changes are, and these are codified in an agreement that we have with FHWA, in FEMIS, and so anytime you need to make a change to your project, not only do you need to get approval from WisDOT to make that change, we then have to go to FHWA and get concurrence that that change is okay. So around the time your project gets authorized or when you begin charging to it, you really need to have everything locked down. Changes after that point become problematic. So just there's that. Reimbursements. So, sorry. Reimbursements. The local sponsor pays for everything up front and requests reimbursement from WisDOT. Both WisDOT and FHWA then make sure all the rules were followed and reimburse the sponsor. For the purposes of your local program projects, with very, very few exceptions, reimbursements are 80% with a 20% cost share paid for by you. It is important for you all to remember about your 20% cost share because cash flow and your local budgets, especially after a snowy winter with a lot of salt, can occasionally be problematic. So for the year that you're scheduling your project, make sure that you have your, because it probably won't be the year you're awarded, make sure that your budget has the money it needs for that 20% cost share and can, so that you can begin spending right away and your budgets won't keep you from beginning your project as it was originally scheduled. So staying on top of your local budget and your funding will be important. It's important to remember it's important for you to remember how, like, well, we'll just move on. Time limited. The other thing that is important about these projects is that your projects are time limited. They are guaranteed only in the year specified in the SMA. You cannot assume that your project will be allowed to slip into a new state fiscal year. State fiscal year is July 1st through June 30th. Local program and the department do everything in their powers to accommodate your requests for different fiscal years if you need to move your project because of a schedule issue, but it is quite complicated. When we are in the federal register, we are required to have a beginning date and an end date for our projects, and that end date will make that end date is specified as with an agreement. It's codified in your SMA, and if you want to move your end date, then you will have to if you want to move your schedule date and it impacts that end date that you have, there are a lot of restrictions on changing that end date. So what we want to make sure is that you when you are thinking about moving that project, that you consider how long that project will be. You remember that your project may not get scheduled in the following year. It might be 1, 2, or 3 years out from where you wanted it, and that final date that's codified in your SMA, if it bumps up against that, you may risk the possibility of not getting reimbursed for the final parts of your project. The other thing is your project needs to be in the STIP. That is a 6-year transportation investment plan. It is statewide, and if you are in an urban area, your project also needs to be in a TIP. And getting into the STIP can take about 2 months. So before your project is even allowed to begin, your design can even begin, you need to make sure that it has had the time to make through this federally required STIP process or TIP process. And now finally, we'll talk about the all work complete date. The all work complete date is in accordance with the Code of Federal Regulations 2 CFR 200, and it is a work performance period. We have some flexibility in setting that performance period, but it's very hard to change the performance period once a project is authorized. So again, going back to that schedule date, if you start moving your schedule date around, you might end up bumping into the back end of that all work complete date, and then it gets really complicated to complete things and get reimbursed in a timely way. We'll have to work with FHWA to see what we can do, but your best bet is to just make sure that you begin your project the year it was scheduled. Okay, next slide. The reason some of this is all very complicated is because the way federal funding works is with FHWA gives us an authority to spend money, and we spend those dollars every year. We make sure that if all of the money that FHWA allows us to spend every year is spent, and it takes us a while to get these projects up and running. So we have fully programmed our transportation plan for the next several years. And when you want to move out of your funding year and into another, odds are that that future year is full. And therefore, if you want to move into an upcoming year, you will leave a hole in your year and possibly need to move out further than 1 year. The reason is if the authority that FHWA gives us to spend their dollars does not carry over into the next fiscal year. If we don't use all of their authority to spend their money, then we lose it. So it is really important that we keep our schedule full, and it is really important that we do everything we can to backfill when a project does end up moving. So federal funds are very different from state funds. State funds carry over until they are used. So if you are used to LRIP, this is very different. For federal funds, each year, the available federal funding that WisDOT may use on projects is reset to more or less the prior year amount. This means that if a project does not go in the year in which it was planned, the funds for that project lapse or go away. So when your project needs to move, local program and the department will do everything in their power to accommodate your request, but it is complicated and sometimes not possible. So again, we're back to this idea that your schedule date is really important, because if you don't go at the time that you were originally scheduled, you risk being bumped a year or two, and that does have impact on your all work complete date. So there's a lot there to unpack, but staying on top of your schedule, on top of your budgets, on top of all of the things that you need to do, like making sure your project's submitted for the TIP or the STIP, all become very, very important. Okay, next slide. So we'll recap with just a few considerations and limitations. Remember that when you present a request for a change management, either for an increase in funds or a change in schedule date, that change cannot always be accommodated in the year that you want. So when you're making that request, remember you cannot go beyond the all work complete date. And just some helpful hints. If you think your project's going to need more funding, or if you think you're not going to make your original schedule date, and I cannot emphasize this enough, you absolutely, absolutely must work with your local program manager in your region as soon as you know, because the sooner we know, the more we can do to help you accommodate your move or your change. And again, you're going to hear this a lot today. Just please stay, you have that list. Please stay on top of those deliverables and on top of your schedule. If you start slipping, things start to go sideways. It does get a lot harder. And again, so stay on top of your deliverables and your schedule, and work with your program manager as soon as you know that you're running into problems with schedule or with your funded amount. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Tanya. Next slide. Next, we have a recorded presentation on utility coordination from statewide utility engineer Abby Williamson, who could not be with us today. Abby previously worked as a regional utility engineer for WisDOT Southeast region before starting her statewide position in 2017. And in her current position, she is involved in multiple state and national committees, utility-related local program oversight, statewide 3D utility survey efforts, stakeholder outreach, and she regularly works with regional staff to address utility coordination needs. So Ryan, why don't we start the presentation?
Hi, everyone. My name is Abby Williamson, and I'm one of the statewide utility engineers in a Bureau of Technical Services working out of our Hill Farms State Office building. Today, I will be talking a little bit about utility coordination. So I'm sure many of you know by now how essential utility coordination can be to keep project schedules on track. But it's also important to note that per Wisconsin Statute 86.16, utilities have a right to occupy the public right-of-way, and we are also required to avoid interference with transmission facilities to the best extent possible, which means we should be looking for ways to design around conflicts. Early communication with municipal utilities can also be useful so that system upgrades or maintenance can be planned to coincide with upcoming projects. And the overall goal should be the lowest total cost for both the state taxpayers and utility ratepayers. Coordinating with utilities to minimize or avoid utility conflicts can help achieve this goal. The next two slides will focus on the overall role of the LPA, design consultant, and WisDOT units. The LPA and their design consultant are ultimately the responsible parties for handling utility coordination, which includes following any applicable local, state, and federal regulations, as well as guidance included in the WisDOT Guide to Utility Coordination. The LPA and their design consultant should go through the utility coordination task list at the start of each project and keep close communication with the local program project manager, or LPPM, regarding the status of coordination throughout the project. Once utility coordination is complete, the LPA must finalize all PS&E documents and send a certification of utility coordination to the LPPM. While the LPPM is not technically responsible for utility coordination, they will have to complete signatures on the final utility status report, or USR, and should work with the LPA throughout the project to keep things on track. Region utility staff will not be doing reviews of any documents, but our central office will review PS&E documentation prior to project clearing. If there are any utility-related questions, you should first consult our utility coordination guide or other online resources that I have posted at the end of my presentation. And if there are still questions, the LPPM can either contact me or their regional unit utility staff. Here is a very brief overview of the utility coordination timeline, which starts with creating a list of utilities in the area and sending them a notice of the upcoming project. Utilities should then be field located and shown on the plan sheets to identify potential conflicts. Further in design, a plan set should be shared with utilities that can be used to design their relocations, along with any necessary release of rights or agreement documents. Once utilities return their proposed relocation plans, these should be reviewed and approved by the LPA or design consultant. After plans have been approved, the next step is to finalize PS&E documents. Finally, the right-of-way should be staked as needed for utility relocations, and the LPA should continue to monitor the status of relocations prior to and during construction. It is also important to invite utilities to early planning or public involvement meetings and to hold utility coordination meetings throughout the project as needed. The Utility Coordination Task List offers more details of specific tasks that may be required. This list is not set in stone, and each task may not apply to all projects. The LPA and design consultant will be responsible for any listed tasks and should work together to complete a new list at the start of each project. In order for utility companies to design their relocation plans, they should be sent a project plan set with enough detail to fully identify conflicts with their facilities. Project plans should include, at minimum, the plan and profile, cross-section, and typical section sheets. It is also helpful to include items such as the staging, storm sewer, signal, lighting and structure plans, as well as the right-of-way plat if these apply to your project. You should try to send the plan set around 60 to 70% design, which should allow for a 30-day review timeframe of submitted work plans, as well as additional time for utilities to hopefully begin relocations prior to construction. Now to touch on Trans 220, generally speaking, this only applies to the state trunk highway system, so local roads do not fall under these rules. With that being said, WisDOT still recommends following the timelines and processes, as this helps to keep coordination consistent statewide. Lately, we've been seeing more projects include a mix of state and local roads, so just a reminder that if you're dealing with utility delays or disputes with the contractor, you cannot enforce Trans 220 rules unless it occurs within state road limits and is considered a highway improvement project. The most important Trans 220 timeline to keep in mind is for the utility work plan return time. Utilities should receive 60 days for minor or resurfacing projects, 90 days for reconditioning, and 120 days for a reconstruction project. An extra 30 days should be added if a utility has land rights or is coordinating work with other utilities. When reviewing a utility work plan, here are some items to keep in mind. First, it is important to make sure that all potential conflicts have been addressed in the work plan. Also, if the utility has proposed extensive or costly relocations, there may be slight design changes, such as storm sewer or beam guard post placement, that can be done to avoid certain conflicts. Timelines and the staging of relocations are also very important. Utility work plans should fit not only with proposed construction activities, but also with other utility schedules and placement. Finally, unless utility work has been approved in the roadway contract, the utility company is responsible for their relocations, and the work plan should not include any directives to the contractor. If you have real estate and associated utility land rights on your project, you will want to communicate as early as possible with any affected utilities. Without calling out any specific names, this is especially important with larger multi-state companies, as you will likely be working with staff who may have different processes than Wisconsin, and it can cause significant delays. You'll want to use either a quitclaim deed or conveyance of rights when releasing utility rights within fee acquisition, and a temporary construction easement for TLE or PLE areas. Shown here is the local version of the conveyance. When filling this out, make sure that the grantor name is the legal name of the utility, which you can confirm with the utility when filling these out. Also, the statutory authority dropdown at the top and the grantee should match the public agency who will be the owner of the acquired lands, which doesn't necessarily match who is taking care of the acquisition. Now, you may have heard that WisDOT has been working on changing our utility acquisition policy and processes. This new policy no longer includes separate utility releases of rights, but instead those land rights will be acquired through the real estate process along with the typical land acquisition, with utilities named as a party of interest. Projects that are further along in design won't be required to switch to this process, but it has become the policy for newly started projects on state trunk highways as of February 2025. This new policy will not be required on any local projects. However, it may be a useful tool in keeping project schedules on track, so LPAs should consider which process may work best early on in design. Regardless of which policy is used, all projects starting with the 2026 to 2031 program cycle will require a form to explain why that policy was chosen. WisDOT does not intend to use this for any official approvals or denials, but just to keep on file for documentation purposes. You can find more details about these updates in the FDM, REPM, and WisDOT Guide to Utility Coordination. If you have any questions, you can also reach out to our General Utility Coordination mailbox at DOT/DTSD/CO Utility Coordination at dot.wi.gov. The compensation process for eligible utility relocation costs has not changed regardless of which policy is used for acquiring utility land rights. Any compensable relocation costs that are included in the contract should be detailed under the Real Estate Acquisition Cost section of the SMA, labeled as compensable utility costs. Compensable utility work that is not included in the contract should be covered with a locally funded utility agreement. And with all of the different grant opportunities, you'll want to ensure that any compensable work is not already being funded by another source. For non-compensable work, anything included in the contract should be listed under non-participating items, and all other work is typically not included in the SMA. When it comes time to clear a project for let, our central office utility unit will review the utilities article of the special provisions, the general note sheet, and the USR. Both our WisDOT utility guide and our Let Review Standards job aid include guidance on writing the special provisions, as well as common situations that you may come across with the USR. The LPA should fill out everything on the USR except for the certification and signature boxes. They should then send the USR to the LPPM along with the statement certifying that coordination has been completed. The LPPM can then finish completing the certification and signature fields on the USR. If you have a low-risk project that is not using any federal funds, an official USR will not be required, but it is still necessary to certify that coordination has been completed. It is very important to stay involved while utilities relocate their facilities, which starts with their permit application. It can be helpful to send utilities a 30-day reminder prior to their start date if they have not already applied for their permit. Regular check-ins should be set up with utility companies to track their work status, and if possible, intermittent field checks when utilities are relocating. Prior to the pre-construction meeting, you should also get an update from all utilities on their status and continue check-ins for any relocations during construction. As mentioned before, please check out these resources. And I've got my contact information also shown here, so feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Abby Williams.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ryan. Next, Kris Sommers will be giving an overview of railroad coordination. Kris has been the WisDOT Supervisor of Railroad Engineering and Safety since December 2018. In this position, he works with highway and safety projects to help implement safety improvements at grade crossings. He earned a bachelor's degree in civil and environmental engineering from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 1996 and became a Wisconsin registered professional engineer in 2001. He has been with the department since 2000 and has more than 26 years of civil engineering experience in both private industry and state government. So welcome, Kris.
Thank you, Merrill. We can go to this next slide right away, Ryan. Welcome, everybody. We'll talk a little bit about railroad coordination today. We're going to try to give you a little overview of railroad coordination, particularly at-grade coordination. That's predominantly our projects. And recognizing we're not going to be able to touch everything in the short 10 minutes that we have. So you're going to hear me talk a lot about region railroad coordinators, and we'll get to that. Next slide, please. This is what you see here is our rail map in Wisconsin, sorted by our 4 Class 1 railroads that we have and some of the short line railroads that we have. Some highlights on the west side of the state, we have BNSF and shown in maroon or brown. Canadian National is shown in blue. CPKC, formerly Canadian Pacific, is shown in pink, and Union Pacific is shown in green. And we have various other short line railroads. And next slide, please. Next, we'll go into why is railroad coordination necessary? The short answer is our federal and state laws. To elaborate in the federal code regarding warning devices, warning devices would be the signage, the lighting, the gates that are there at railroad crossings. When there are federal funds on a project, the federal code requires that adequate warning devices shall be installed before that project is open to traffic. So that's one of our guiding principles with projects. And as a matter of fact, we as WisDOT policy have extended that when there are state funds involved, that same rule applies. Similarly, with crossing surfaces, there is state statute to require that when a project comes through, the crossing surface must be re-upped or fixed if necessary. And then regarding the PS&E documents, that of course is the final goal of the design end of any project. Our goal, as we coordinate with the work with the railroads, is to have the railroad agreements signed before that PS&E date comes. Next slide, please. To elaborate on the crossing and surface work that's done at grade crossings, there's something unique about that I'll elaborate on, different from a lot of the LET projects that is performed in the state of Wisconsin. When we do this work, that is always done by the railroad forces. It's force account work performed by the railroad forces or their contractor. So thus, those are the agreements that we need to come to perform that work with the railroads. Those are the agreements that we need to complete and get executed, signed by the railroad by the PS&E time. Next slide, please. Critical path items. I just added this because not always is railroad coordination a critical path item, but it certainly can be. With the requirements that we just mentioned in the past couple minutes, the signing of those railroad agreements is essential to get to a let and awarded contract. So railroad coordination can be a critical path item, and our best advice is try to get in front of it, try to work with your region railroad coordinator is as much as we can ahead of time. Next slide, please. These are just to elaborate on some of the roles that will and can be critical to your project delivery. Of course, you've got your local employees and stakeholders. Sometimes consultants are hired by local program project stakeholders to deliver those projects. The region railroad coordinator is essential. There are 5 transportation regions, as you probably know, in the state of Wisconsin. And we have at least one region railroad coordinator in each region. That would be your first phone call if you have any questions or need any help, and we'll give you those contacts in a further slide. That's your number one takeaway from this, is that region railroad coordinator. Rails and harbors, that's I and my team. We are the entity that works with the Region Railroad Coordinator to then negotiate with the railroads to come up with the estimates and the agreements for the work that needs to be done. The Office of Commissioner of Railroads is an entity that has authority in the state of Wisconsin for adequacy of warning devices at grade crossings. They may or may not get involved in a project depending on the complexity and scope of the work. And of course, we talked about the railroad companies. They're the ones that have a stake in it and they perform the work at the grade crossings. Next slide, please. Here's an elaboration on the Region Railroad Coordinators. Hopefully, if you can get a slide deck, you'll be able to read those contact names. Those are the folks that would be, again, your first phone call to, depending on what county you are working in, your project is in. Next slide, please. The next thing we'll talk about is the proximity. When you have a railroad crossing on your project, we talked about that is necessary to have adequate warning devices. But there's also an important nuance when there's a crossing near your project. And our rule of thumb there is when your project limit is within 1,000 feet of a grade crossing, you need to consider and include railroad coordination. Next slide, please. This is just to elaborate on the federal FHWA, Federal Highway Administration rules regarding that point that I just made. This is to illustrate it visually. What you on the left is to show what you might have anticipated as your project limit. And there's a grade crossing just off the project limit. But regarding that 1,000-foot rule, and remember, the 1,000-foot is a rule of thumb. The real rule is the advanced warning signs of the grade crossing. If they are within your project, that will mobilize that grade crossing to be covered within the scope of your project. Next slide, please. This slide is just meant to show, not to scare you away from railroad coordination, but to show that there are some real things that need to be done within the lead time, within when a project is initiated with a rail project submittal package. That's what RPSP stands for in here. And some of these items that need to be done, some of these items are done internally by our team. Some of them are externally and outside of our control, the OCR process and the work that needs to be done by the railroad companies. Those are outside of our control. So the point there is getting ahead of it and allowing time is essential. And we realize, especially on local program projects, the timelines are tight and you have delivery timelines. We talked about federal completion dates. It can be a particular challenge. And again, try to get ahead of it as much as possible. Next slide, please. This is just to reiterate some of the important points that we already talked about. I will not reread them, but the lead time for railroad coordination at a typical at-grade project is 24 months regarding all those important tasks that need to be done that we mentioned in the previous slide. Structure coordination is even more complicated, takes even more time. And warning devices, when you have those on your project, those do become, the cost of those do become a project responsibility. Next slide, please. And this is just to elaborate further on the structures. And again, same message, contact your region railroad coordinator. Next slide, please. This is just touching on the MUTCD. In Wisconsin, we have a Wisconsin supplement to the MUTCD. On the national version, this just got updated in early January of 2024. And we in WisDOT are currently working on our Wisconsin supplement to that. So sometime very soon, potentially as early as the next month or two, we should be seeing a new Wisconsin supplement to the 11th edition of the MUTCD. Next slide, please. And this is just a safety alert that this ENS sign, the emergency notification sign, this is a sign that you should see, according to federal law, at every single railroad crossing, public or private, in the United States of America. And it's just, even just as a motorist, not necessarily a project stakeholder, if you ever see somebody or yourself hung up on the track, or if those warning devices are malfunctioning, going off all the time, anything, there is a phone number and there is a 7-digit code for that very particular railroad crossing. It consists of 6 numbers and a letter, and you will call that, and you will get a great response from the railroad, and they will take you seriously. So, safety notification. And next slide, please. That is everything we have. Thank you very much for your attention. Appreciate it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kris. Next, Megan Munden will be giving a presentation discussing real estate acquisition for local highway and bridge projects across Wisconsin. Megan is a 2019 graduate of UW-Madison with a bachelor's degree in business administration and who has private sector experience as a real estate specialist, performing project management duties, eminent domain acquisitions, and market research reports for various projects across the state. She also is experienced with utility coordination and working with utilities to ensure adequate conflict management during project planning stages. In the spring of 2024, Megan took on her current role as WisDOT's statewide local program real estate manager, and she is excited to present for the first time at this year's local program symposium. So welcome, Megan.
Thank you, Merrill. Yes, so I am the statewide local program real estate manager, otherwise known as the LPREM, and we will get right into it. Next slide, please. Some of the things that I will be covering today are going to be updates for the real estate that we've seen over the past year and will see throughout the summer. And then I will be wrapping up with some goals that we have moving forward. For the updates, we will go through manual updates, a clarification to statute 32.015. We will briefly go over the utility land interests and/or rights acquisition policy update. And then for goals, I will cover project audits, monthly policy reminders, and form updates. I will also put a plug in for the 2025 Real Estate Conference that will be happening on September 23rd and 24th of this year. If you have any interest in attending, please feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is at the end of my slide deck here, and that will be in the Wisconsin Dells at the Wilderness. There is a fee if you are not a DOT employee. I think in the past it's been around $60. Next slide, please. So FHWA has required that we submit a manual update to them by June 3rd of this year. That includes both WisDOT's Real Estate Program Manual, the REPM, as well as the Local Program Real Estate Manual, the LPRE Manual. So if you are familiar with our current manuals, you will see that those are going to be updated, and those updates will likely be published sometime later this summer. Once those manual updates do come through, they will be published to DOT's website, and I did provide a link to that webpage down below. If you do go to that link, you will see that it takes you to the local program real estate's main webpage, and from there you can maneuver over to the manuals, to our forms, as well as seeing our contact information for the regional local program real estate project managers that you would be in contact with on your projects, and the lists for the approved staff and consultants to do real estate work on your projects. Next slide. Briefly going through some clarification on statute updates. Back in around 2017 or so, there was an addition to statute 32, which governs eminent domain and allows us to utilize condemnation on our projects. That statute prevented condemnation for the establishment or extension of recreational trails, bicycle ways, bicycle lanes, and pedestrian ways. More recently, there was a case, Sojourn Homer LLC versus the Village of Egg Harbor, which the Supreme Court released their decision for in June of 2024. In the Supreme Court's decision, they noted that sidewalks are unambiguously excluded from the above statute, Statute 32.015, meaning that the village was not prohibited from condemning property to build sidewalk. So just to keep in mind on your projects as you move forward, that if you have any recreational trails, bicycle ways, bicycle lanes, or pedestrian ways, and any of the acquisition on your project is in regards to those improvements, you cannot use condemnation to acquire those interests, and so it may impact both your design as well as your time frame on the project. Sidewalks, however, are not included. We can condemn for sidewalks. Next slide, please. Utility land interests and or rights, as Abby Williamson had noted in her slides, has gone through an update. All state projects are required to acquire the utility land interests and or rights as a part of the real estate, as a party of interest to the acquisition. This is not required for local projects. It is optional. And to allow local program projects the most amount of flexibility, we are initiating a form that needs to be completed to document which choice the utility or which choice the local is making as far as acquiring the utility land interests with the real estate or with utility coordination. This form will be required for all projects that are a part of the 2026 through 2031 program cycle and later. So if you have any projects that are currently out there or part of a prior program, this form is not required. If you are part of a prior program, you will automatically be using the utility land interests as part of the utility coordination. Next slide, please. On the form, once it is completed, it is currently in development right now. It will be uploaded to DOT's website. The form should be sent out to the local by the local program project manager, and it should be completed as soon as possible in the project. Ideally, that is before the DSR is approved, and it must be completed before real estate activities start because it will impact the process that real estate follows when they are acquiring the release of rights. The decision itself will have an impact on the timeframes. If the utility land interests and or rights are being acquired as a part of real estate, it will take longer for that real estate process to take place. As well, the decision may have impacts on consulting contracts. If you have a contract set up with one, say, following the utility interest being acquired as a part of real estate, and they are not acquired that way, they are instead acquired as a part of the utility coordination, the contract may need to be amended to account for that. Next slide, please. The old policy, which is what has been used to date, is when the utility land interests and or rights are acquired as a part of the utility coordination. Those are acquired by the utility coordinators, and they are acquired on a corridor level. This means usually that there are fewer documents as compared to the new policy because the utilities are able to release most of their interests within a few documents. A QCD, a quitclaim deed, a COR, conveyance of rights, or a TCE, temporary construction easement, and those can apply to the entire project corridor. In this policy, the utilities do not have appeal rights, and the LPA must be willing to put the project on hold if an agreement with the utility cannot be reached. This is because condemnation cannot be utilized in this policy. Next slide, please. The new policy, which is where utility land interests and or rights are acquired as a part of the real estate, is when the utility land interests are acquired by real estate agents. And when that occurs, they would be acquired on a per parcel basis as a party of interest to that acquisition. This does mean that there likely will be more documents as compared to the old policy, where the utility land interests are acquired on a corridor level. The per parcel level will require that every single parcel that utility has interests on, a separate package of documents is sent out to the utility for each parcel. In this policy, the utility does have appeal rights. And on parcels where condemnation is possible, as we discussed earlier, there are some limitations to condemnation. The utilities, if we're unable to reach an agreement with them, they may be acquired through condemnation if necessary. Next slide. Some goals moving forward for our program. If you have seen in the past year or so, we have ramped up our project audits prior to certification. That will continue as we move forward. We want to make sure that we are following all of the necessary laws, policies, and regulations that we have to act under. And in order to hopefully make those audits be more seamless and smooth, we do plan to initiate policy reminders on a monthly basis moving forward, probably starting in the summertime sometime. And those emails would be sent out to any staff or consultants who are on our approved lists doing work for real estate, and they will cover different topics that we may be seeing issues coming up on to hopefully catch those issues before they reach our audits at the end of the project. And finally, we do hope in the coming year or so to start looking through, again, the forms that we have out there for local program real estate and making sure that they are up to date. So you may see some updates on those forms moving forward through the next year or so. Next slide, please. And that is all I have for you today. My contact information is on the screen. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to me. Also, if any of your questions involve utility land interests and/or rights, please also include the utility coordination email that you see on the screen. Thank you.
All right, great. Thanks, Megan. Next, we have a recorded presentation from Matthew Johnson-Gast on the Highway Safety Improvement Program. Matthew is the HSIP Program Manager in WisDOT's Bureau of State Highway Programs. He has been with the department for a year and a half, and he also serves as the WisDOT Liaison for the Federal Land Access Program. So let's go ahead and roll his presentation.
Good morning. My name is Matthew Johnson-Gast. I am the statewide HSIP manager here at Wisconsin DOT in the Bureau of State Highway Programs. And today I'll be discussing with you the Highway Safety Improvement Program, or what I'll call it for the rest of this presentation, HSIP. So today I'll be just jumping through an overview of HSIP and going through some of the basics from the program and its objectives, HSIP funding, the cycle and deadlines that the program runs on, typical projects that we see within HSIP, and then the High Risk Rural Roads program, which is a dedicated local road safety program within HSIP, and then the process from application submittal to programming approval. So jumping into the HSIP overview, the objective of HSIP is to create a program of projects that reduce the number and severity of all crashes on all public roadways. The program is data-driven and has a focus on infrastructure improvements that are low cost and can be implemented quickly. High-risk rural roads is a key sub-program that has a long history within HSIP, and I'll go into more details about program eligibility later for that sub-program. Jumping right into also the program funding, HSIP is a federal formula funded program. Wisconsin programs roughly $60 million a year in federal HSIP funds. I do want to make a critical distinction when it comes to program funding that this is not a federal grant program. This is a federal reimbursement program, as there is a cost share and copay associated with projects in HSIP. And as you can see here, that funding split and how that looks, typical projects within HSIP are 90% federally funded, and then whoever is proposing the project or submitting the application typically pays that 10% match. So that is the cost share, and I'll go further in details later on the funding. Looking at the program cycle and application deadlines, HSIP is a 4-year program that runs on a biannual cycle. We have a solicitation every spring and every fall. We'll refer to our spring solicitation as our mid-cycle and our fall as our standard cycle. And as you can see here on the screen, we do have 2 upcoming solicitations, and the dates for those for the state fiscal 26 to 29 programming. So those are key things to remember. It should be easy to remember. We do keep August 15th and February 15th the same every single year. So those dates will never change. And that is when your HSIP submission is due to region staff. And then just a note that although HSIP is a 4-year program and that we look to implement projects quickly, we do understand that some improvements do have more complicated delivery schedules. And given that, we can program into years 5 and 6 of HSIP, but that will be given lower priority, and that should be coordinated with your region HSIP coordinator. So if you understand and know ahead of time that that's something that your project's going to need, make sure you communicate that with region staff so that that can make it through the review process. So jumping right into some typical eligible projects that we see in HSIP, there's a lot of, intersection improvements, segment improvements, bike ped improvements that we see. So on the screen here, to just run through a couple, we have our intersection improvements, which includes roundabouts, channelization, and turning improvements. We have installing and modifying traffic signals, improving sight distance, access modifications. On the next slide, we continue with some pedestrian improvements where we have countdown timers and signals. You have your guardrails and barriers. By no means are the last 2 slides an exhaustive list. If you have any questions about project eligibility within HSIP, I encourage you to reach out to your region HSIP coordinator. They're very knowledgeable on the guidelines of the program and can help answer those questions if you have them. Now, looking at high-risk rural roads program, this is very important to the local program symposium because this is a sub-program within HSIP dedicated to local road safety. This is a program that's focused on runoff road crashes, specifically on rural minor and major collectors. This is in alignment with the overarching objectives of HSIP, as this program maintains a focus on fatal and serious injury crashes and looking to implement low-cost countermeasures quickly. This program does require minimal resourcing from locals. I'd say requires minimal. There isn't all too much. We try to leverage state resources and utilize a consultant throughout the process so that we can help facilitate getting these safety concerns addressed on local roads. And I'll go into more details about what that process looks like on the next slide or 2. So how that first starts is this bullet point on the bottom. Here in central office, we do an annual review of crash data statewide to look at corridors that are potentially eligible in a guidance and in alignment with our methodology we have set up for the program. And then the next step after that screening, when we've identified the top 20 corridors across the state, the regional WisDOT safety engineer will do a further review and analysis of the corridor. If the corridor passes region review, it will move on to a final list where the region staff will contact the local agency with jurisdiction over the corridor for potential participation in the program. And at this point, like I said, minimal resourcing, there is no cost associated. So if a local agency is approached by the region staff to be participating in the program to get a corridor safety evaluation, which is the next step, there is no cost that will be developed with no charge to the local agency who's participating in the program. And with that corridor safety evaluation, I'll just go quickly through what that includes. So that'll include a summary of locations between the corridor that has specific safety concerns. It'll have a list of safety treatments in the corridor that are eligible for high-risk roads funding. And then it'll also include the end cost estimates for design and construction if you choose to construct what's recommended by the WisDOT consultant. So an agency can participate if a CSE is done. Local agencies do a CSE, they're not obligated to have high-risk funding. But if you are, I just want to make 2 important notes. If you're doing funding, that real estate acquisition is not an completed that it can be used for the duration of 3 application periods. There is a small ad hoc application that will get sent out if your corridor is eligible for the program. Along with that, and then we'll just attach the CSE to that application. So jumping into the process, so going from applications to review to project approval and then programming details. So we'll dive into some of that, how that looks within HSIP. There are several requirements for your HSIP submission. First and foremost is the HSIP application. That's also referred to as DT Form 1501. And this is available on the HSIP website under the Safety tab on the WisDOT homepage. Region staff also can provide this for you if needed. We also have a general sketch for what's being proposed, so that'll show what countermeasure you plan to deploy. We look for collision diagrams, so looking specifically at what's happening at those locations that are being proposed in regards to what crashes that there's been. And then closely followed after that is crash history. We do ask that individual crash reports be available upon request to region staff, and they'll indicate if they need that, but a summary of those reports would be sufficient. And if you're not sure what that looks like, we do plan on providing more examples on the HSIP website, but then you can also work with region staff as well to get a better understanding of what that may look like until we get those examples put up on the website. And then some other requirements are site photos. So we want to look at, current conditions and what's out there. Google Earth View has been submitted before, and we will accept that. If there are any countermeasures or any changes that have been made to the roadway that aren't captured in the photos, that will need to be discussed within the application and should be communicated to region staff. And then the last 2 items, one is supplied by WisDOT, but I'll jump into the other one that needs to be supplied by the local agency, is an itemized cost estimate. Obviously, that's an important thing to know if you're requesting funding. So we do ask that that is provided as well. And then finally, a project evaluation factor worksheet, or what we refer to as a PEF worksheet. And this is something that is done by WisDOT staff and is attached to the application submission. So then jumping into the project evaluation factor, or I'll be referring to it on the slide as PEF, this is something that region staff calculate for each HSIP application, and it's used to evaluate and compare proposed projects. We get a lot of submissions, so this is a good way to see what that benefits are for the safety improvement being proposed, and I'll go into how that calculation works on the next couple bullet points. The PEF estimate estimates crash reduction potential for proposed improvements and compares them to project cost over a 10-year period. And then what that calculation all includes is estimated cost of the proposed project, crash history at the project location, identification of crashes that the project would target and reduce. So we're looking at what's being proposed in the project application, and then specifically the crash types that we're seeing at that location and how they would be addressed. So that's factored into the calculation. And then an estimate crash reduction of potential proposed improvements, which are based on established research and studies. So we're just looking at what factor those crashes would be reduced by and what crashes specifically. So then once your project has had that PEF calculated, the analysis part is complete, and that'll move on to HSIP review. And how that works is your region staff will be working with you and coordinating with you any needs or any clarification before that application is then submitted to central office, where I will review it, and then I'll look, make sure everything's aligned with program eligibility, and if anything was missed or if there's any discrepancies between any of the required materials, and then that'll go on to the HSIP review committee, and that will then be advisory to Bishop or the Bureau of State Highway Programs to then make programming decisions and inclusion into HSIP. But moving on to some of the details that are good to know if your project is approved. There is that copay and funding cap that applies to all projects. That's what I mentioned pretty early on in this presentation, where it's funded at 90% federal funds and 10% state funds or local funds, whoever's proposing the project. And then looking for local projects, since this is the local program symposium, any overages beyond that funding cap will then be charged to the local sponsor. But also understanding that things change throughout the project delivery, that a funding cap increase might be needed, or if there's a schedule change. Those are things that we can make those determinations as needed, and those do require central office approval here from the Bureau of State Highway Programs, and that will be facilitated through your region staff. So please reach out to them if any of those changes do occur. And then finally, for any changes that might happen is a project scope change. With that, obviously costs are bound to change as well. So then that will also require a resubmission with an updated PEF. So that will definitely need to be coordinated with your region staff to get that resubmitted. So then kind of touching on the copay requirement that I briefly touched on the last slide, for locally sponsored projects, we're looking at a 4.6 million copay requirement. So for that first 4.6 million, that's funded at that 90-10 level. If it goes beyond the that first 4.6 million, so if you're looking at something over 4.7 or above, that overage of 4.6 will then be charged to the local sponsor, and that will not be covered at 90-10 federal. And then if it goes beyond that second 4.6 million portion, it will then be split between HSIP and non-HSIP sources. And the intent behind the copay requirement is to prevent a single large project from using too much HSIP funds in a given year. There's obviously a lot of safety needs across the state, so this is one way to help ensure that we're addressing all of those safety concerns everywhere. So then just some helpful tips that I have for HSIP applications. On the first 2 pages of the application form, there are some general instructions of what should be filled out. So I know it can be a little tedious to read the instructions. I know people get eager to fill it out, but it's something that I recommend. It's what we look for in the review. I think it helps make a stronger application and helps, navigate any questions you may have regarding what's needed and why it's needed. So definitely look to those. One thing that we definitely look at is the documented crash history. So if there's, a long history of crashes happening at this intersection or road segment, those are stronger candidates for inclusion into HSIP. And then specifically when you're looking at the application, there's a proposed improvements box, which I believe is box number 5 on the first page. When looking at filling that out, please justify your selected improvement and explain why the alternatives weren't selected. And if there's been any other countermeasures that have been deployed at that location and crashes have continued, please make sure to list out those countermeasures that are already out there in case we don't see them in the site photos. It's really important to know what incremental changes have happened and just a better understanding of the location and the crash history. And then my final tip is to just be realistic with the provided estimate and state fiscal time frame. As you can see here on the note, if there's any real estate acquisition or any utility, obviously that will change the project schedule. So that's important that you're being as accurate as possible. Like I said in previous slides, we can be pretty easy to work with on those things. We really want to see these safety projects get delivered and improve, the safety on our roadways. So we just ask that you be realistic with the time frame and the estimates that are being provided in those application submissions. And then just for some more information, there's a lovely local government webpage that WisDOT has, and that is where some HSIP information is. We also have an HSIP webpage on the safety tab on the main WisDOT homepage. That's where you can find more general program information that goes beyond what I said in my quick couple minutes here. And then you can find my contact information there at the bottom of the screen. And then on the next 2 slides, you'll find our region HSIP coordinators. These are the people you'll go to for questions on your application, or if you have any general program information questions. And then on this next slide, we also have the region safety engineers, and these are the people who you'll go to if you have any questions regarding your proposed improvement or that project analysis with the project evaluation factor. So those are some helpful contexts that I encourage you to reach out with. And that is the conclusion of HSIP. Thank you.
All right, great. And oh, thanks, Brian. I know that we apparently had some audio difficulties during a portion of that presentation. We'll see what we can do about getting some of that cleaned up for the replay that gets posted. Anyway, we have reached the point in the agenda where we're going to take our afternoon break. I know we're running a little bit behind, so why don't we take a 15-minute break and we'll come back at 1:55 for the final session. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are entering the home stretch for our 2025 Local Program Symposium. Our last session will start with a presentation from Tanya Smith on Title VI requirements. Tanya is the Senior Title VI and ADA Coordinator in the Office of Business Opportunity and Equity Compliance. She has worked for WisDOT since 2005 in various civil rights programs, including Title VII and ADA for employees. She has an undergraduate degree from Florida A&M University and has a law degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Welcome to Tanya.
Thank you, Merrill. Good afternoon. I am Tanya Smith, and this presentation will introduce the Title VI requirements for local public agencies. Next slide, please. What is Title VI? Title VI is non-discrimination. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination based on race, color, or national origin in programs and activities that receive federal financial assistance. Next slide, please. Every award of federal financial assistance from the U.S. Department of Transportation requires the submission of USDOT Title VI non-discrimination assurances. Next slide, please. Subrecipients that receive federal financial assistance from the U.S. Department of Transportation through WisDOT must also sign the USDOT Title VI non-discrimination assurances. Next slide, please. Who are subrecipients? Subrecipients are cities and counties, planning agencies, consultants, suppliers, universities and colleges, and other recipients of federal aid highway funds. Subrecipient cities and counties of WisDOT are those public agencies that receive federal financial assistance through WisDOT through such programs as STP, not the LRIP, that's a typo, CRP, TAP, and CMAQ. Next slide, please. The requirements for WisDOT as the primary recipient of federal financial assistance include a Title VI implementation plan that is due annually to FHWA on October 1st. The Title VI implementation plan is an SOP for program reviews, subrecipient reviews, training, complaint processing, and language access services. Next slide, please. Another requirement for WisDOT as the primary recipient is a Title VI Goals and Accomplishments report that is due annually to FHWA on December 1st. The report includes the program reviews and subrecipient reviews that were conducted that year. Next slide, please. What are the requirements for subrecipients? Subrecipients must develop a Title VI complaint policy and procedure. Subrecipients must keep a log of all of the Title VI complaints that they receive. Subrecipients who receive a Title VI complaint must forward the complaint to WisDOT, and WisDOT will forward the complaint to FHWA. Next slide, please. Subrecipients must also participate in Title VI compliance reviews. FHWA provides a Title VI review template for state DOTs to use. The review includes notification, a request for information, a desk audit, an on-site review, and report of findings. The reports of finding for compliance reviews conducted in a year are included in that year's Title VI Goals and Accomplishments report. Next slide, please. Guidance and training resources are provided for your information. We encourage you to use these resources. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. My contact information has been provided. Thank you for your time.
All right, thanks to Kwanya. Next, Traffic Forecasting Section Chief Corey Dirks will give a presentation on forecasting in the local programs. Corey has a degree in geography from the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire and has worked in the traffic forecasting section for the last 11 years, developing traffic forecasts and performing travel demand modeling for projects all around the state. Welcome, Corey.
Thanks, Merrill. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Corey Dirks, and I'm here to talk to you about traffic forecasts for local program projects. Next slide, please. So a little bit of background on this. Traffic forecasts for WisDOT local program projects are the responsibility of the local public agency, and the LPA is the designated approver of those forecasts. The WisDOT traffic forecasting section developed policy and guidance in 2023 to assist in the preparation of those forecasts to help standardize and streamline the process. The guidance is documented in Section 70 of the Transportation Planning Manual. Next slide, please. Forecasts are required for projects that need a future AEDT for design purposes. The next slide shows a table of those requirements for the different project concept codes. We know that the availability of traffic count data varies greatly in the local system, and so does the forecasting experience of LPAs. We wanted to create a protocol that was flexible, use readily available tools, and utilize simple methods. The procedures can be done in Excel and are based on national best practices. The WisDOT traffic forecasting section is available to provide additional guidance when necessary. LPA should contact the local program project manager with questions, and the LPPM will work with us as needed. Next slide, please. Here's the table from the Transportation Planning Manual that shows what forecasts are required for the different improvement concept codes. It is the same for the projects on the state trunk highway system. It mostly shows that resurfacing projects and above require a future AEDT for design purposes. Next slide, please. So we have put together guidance and a workflow for 3 methods of developing forecasts for local program projects. Each of these methods offers strengths, and local program forecasters will have flexibility to apply the most appropriate method for their project. The guidance offers a simple walkthrough of the method, the data needs, and other considerations for using that method. Because there is flexibility, some judgment will have to be applied, but the guidance will offer assistance, and we are available to answer questions. Determining which method to use will be a simple workflow that largely depends on the complexity of the project and traffic count history available. If there is strong traffic count history, the LP forecaster can use a trendline analysis. If there is no strong count history, they can use a county average growth rate, where that growth rate is applied to the most recent traffic count. or if there are complex needs for the project, such as capacity changes or reconfigurations, you'll likely want to use a travel demand model. If using a TDM for a forecast, procedures are documented in Section 10 of the TPM. You can contact the LPPM about that, and they will work with us as necessary to provide the model and discuss the methodology. Next slide, please. So the guidance in the TPM offers a simple flowchart to help LPPMs and LPAs determine the appropriate method to use. Then for each method, it covers strengths of that method, data needs and checks to ensure reliability, step-by-step directions with an example, and reasonableness checks for results. Next slide, please. We created an Excel tool to help automate and streamline the process for most local program projects. The tool is posted on the WisDOT website shown on this slide, and this page also links to Section 70 of the TPM, which contains the guidance for local program forecasts. It is recommended that 5 counts are available to use the trendline method, while the county average growth rate requires only 1 traffic count. We do allow some flexibility in which method can be used, and the tool is a simple Excel spreadsheet, so we hope that it can be very user-friendly. The tool is updated annually in the spring or early summer after new county average growth rates are calculated. And we actually just updated the tool within the last week or so with those. And we will also update the tool as needed between those annual updates if things come up. Next slide, please. Here's a screenshot of the tool that we created using the trendline method. So instructions on the right side, there's a spot at the top left to enter in your project information, and then you fill in your historical traffic counts and future forecast years needed. Traffic counts should be reviewed for outliers and excluded as necessary. The tool then calculates the forecast for those years that you specified, and the results are shown on the bottom left. Next slide, please. And then here's a screenshot of the tool showing the county average growth rate method. Again, instructions are on the right side and project information can be entered on the top left. And you fill in your current traffic count and future forecast years as needed. And then the tool applies the county average growth rate based on the county entered at the top and calculates the forecast for those years, which again are shown on the bottom left. Next slide, please. That's all I have. I'll be around for the Q&A portion later on, and there's my contact information if anyone has questions for me. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Corey. To close the presentation portion of the symposium today, we have another pre-recorded segment from WisDOT Environmental Process and Documentation Section Chief Jay Waldschmidt on the local program environmental process. Jay has worked for the Wisconsin Department of Transportation since 1989. He is a professional engineer with a bachelor's degree from the University of Wisconsin-Platteville in mining engineering and a bachelor's degree from the University of Wisconsin-Platteville in civil engineering. His section includes 5 region liaisons and the cultural resources team. He has also served as a design and construction engineer in the old WisDOT District 6, the state noise and air quality engineer, WEPA-NEPA team leader, and central office environmental liaison to the Southeast, Southwest, and Northeast regions, as well as the Bureau of Aeronautics. And with that, let's go ahead and roll his presentation.
Hi, I am Jay Waldschmidt, and I will discuss the environmental process for local program projects. Sorry I can't be with you today. I am taking part in the rollout of the revised EPDS categorical exclusion checklist template that you'll hear about later. Environmental considerations for a local program project begin with the application. It includes a page which helps with environmental scoping. There are environmental resources which must be evaluated to determine if those resources are present. This will help with scheduling the year of project construction based on the length of time it will take to complete analysis on some of these resources for an environmental document. Depending on the type of impact of some resources, it could take up to 2 years to get final concurrence with the agency having jurisdiction over the resource. For example, T&E species review and coordination is getting very complex and lengthy. It is also important to remember that time of year is critical for field reviews. Some plants T&E species and other natural resources are only present during specific times of the year. Other studies like archaeological surveys, hazardous materials phase 1 investigations, and noise analyses can only be performed during warm weather parts of the year. And don't forget that there are specific work restrictions for various species, especially related to in-stream work. If due diligence is not used in filling out the environmental portion of an application, the project may be pulled if environmental resources are later found that were not considered on the project. Having a consultant or staff member knowledgeable in environmental resource analysis is therefore key when completing the application. Don't fake it. So, which environmental document is right for you? Very seldom will a local program project require an EIS or an EA. If the proposed project is that complex, it probably wouldn't be part of the local program. Additionally, 97% of all WisDOT environmental documents are CECs, so your document is probably going to be a CEC too. All elements listed here and a host of others can result in delays to environmental document approval if not completed properly and in a timely fashion. Projects need to be properly scoped and scheduled. Providing a quality document the first time is the best way to facilitate an expedited review time. WisDOT and FHWA are struggling to respond to requests for urgent reviews and approvals, particularly as the number of projects increase and the staff doing reviews decreases. There are only 14 FHWA staff remaining, and the environmental staff are doing reviews for other states that no longer have environmental staff. 1 week turnaround for reviews will be a thing of the past. Quality should always be key in every environmental document prepared. Consultants will be included in CE workshop training this fall. How it will be delivered has not yet been decided. One of the most critical elements lately to get an environmental document approved has been fiscal constraint. I will go over that element on the next 2 slides. For a project to be fiscally constrained, Part 1 means that there must be available money for a future major step in the project, which is defined as substantial acquisition of right-of-way or construction. If there isn't money in the STIP tip for one of these major steps, a STIP tip amendment is required before the environmental document can be signed. Part 2 means the total project cost in the STIP tip of design, utilities, right-of-way, and construction must come within one of the ranges when compared to the total project cost on the environmental document. If this element is a little confusing, a simple explanation is that a STIP tip amendment is required for a project or project phase costs that are greater than 20% and $2 million shown in the STIP tip. It is okay if it is one or the other, but not both. You want to check your STIP tip numbers as you continue to develop your project. It may be required to go back to an old STIP tip to find some design numbers and possibly utility costs, but the department is working on including a total project cost item in future STIPs and tips to eliminate this requirement. There have been substantial changes made to the CEC template to assist preparers in doing it correct. Most of these changes have been listed on this slide. The last sub-bullet related to removal of certain language will apply to all environmental document templates, factor sheets, public involvement plan templates, and other related documents. EPDS and ESS will be rolling these additional templates out as they are completed and approved. Again, this is why it is important to go to the EPDS webpage and get the latest document templates. The new CEC template is already posted on the EPDS ESS website. Use is encouraged, but not required, so EPDS and ESS can get comments back on the template. There will be a Teams rollout of the updated CEC template on May 22nd. Unfortunately, it is occurring at the same time as the symposium. Hopefully someone from your municipality or firm working on the local program attended to learn all of the great items added, but have no fear. If not, the rollout is being recorded. FDM Chapter 6 has been updated. It discusses right-sizing the PI process, adds more discussion about virtual PI options, and explains that some projects do not need public involvement like signal replacements, line painting, bridge deck polymers, and such. But a public involvement plan template still needs to be filled out for the project with an explanation as to why it is believed PI is not needed, and agreement from the region communications manager is required. And don't forget there is a construction element of public involvement. Detours must be considered. There must be a method for non-motorized users, including pedestrians and bicyclists, to get to the other side of construction. Use the In This Together WisDOT website for more information related to assisting the business community during construction. You also need to consider the demographics of the people in the area and users of the roadway. Limited English proficiency might come into play. There is a new questionnaire that needs to be given to people that will have either a property acquisition or be relocated. The questionnaire is voluntary, but required to be given out. More on this on the next slide. There has been a noted uptake in categorical exclusion CE level documents that have anticipated relocations and acquisitions because of the proposed action. There is currently no uniform approach for data collection to facilitate WisDOT's compliance with the above-mentioned orders and guidance. When one of these projects has an anticipated relocation or acquisition, demographic information is critical to inform the public of the impacts of the proposed action. A statewide approach for compliant data collection is warranted to avoid project schedule delays. This approach was developed in collaboration with WisDOT real estate staff, key management personnel, and FHWA to ensure compliance while also reducing duplication of effort between environmental staff and relocation personnel. The region environmental coordinator should be contacted if you have questions. The documents can also be found on the Forms and Tools section of the EPDS ESS website if the links on this slide don't work. Fred Wisner is the person that can answer most of your local program environmental general questions. If you have project-specific questions related to the environmental document preparation, you should be talking to the region local program manager or region environmental coordinator. There are so many other things I could have discussed today. The environmental documentation process is changing almost daily. Please stay informed as ESS and EPDS try to bring you the latest updates. Have a great rest of your symposium. Thanks.
Hi. Hi.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, that wraps up the presentation portion of the symposium, and we do have a few minutes available for questions, and we have some folks who have stuck around to answer those questions. So Ryan, why don't you let us know some of the questions that have come in?
Yes, thank you, Merrill. I will pull up our first question. Our first question is regarding the CRP program. Will there be another CRP program cycle?
Okay, no, that's a great question. We have been getting this question a lot. Yeah, I know I kind of addressed it a little bit in my portion of the presentation. Any future carbon reduction program solicitations ultimately are going to be contingent on whether or not funding is made available through the Wisconsin biennial budget process and future federal congressional actions. We are definitely, though, examining potential opportunities to fund additional carbon reduction program projects. And should that determination ultimately be made, we will be sending out updated information and communications regarding any future carbon reduction program project solicitations to all potential local sponsors. So I would just say, just stay tuned, and we will send out further updates as we learn a little bit more.
And next question, will there be training available for the new TAPWeb program?
Okay, that's a great question. Steph, I see that you are here, so I'll let you weigh in on that one.
Sure, great, thanks. Yes, that's a great question. There will be trainings available for the TAPWeb, the new TAPWeb platform. We have written a step-by-step TAPWeb manual that's intended to help users work through the application process and answer any possible questions. The manual is broken out into different sections to help users navigate how to register for TAPWeb itself, how to navigate the landing page and any actionable items, and then also how to work through the application. We also anticipate hosting a user webinar, which again will be kind of hopefully a live demo action of how to use it. And that will be coming in the near future. So, please keep watch for any future communication regarding the timing of that webinar.
Thank you, Steph. Next question. What are the deadlines for the next round of applications?
Okay, and that is definitely an important question that we can't give the answer to this one enough times. For STP, for local bridge, and for TAP, right now the application deadline is tentatively but pretty solidly set for October 31st. 2025. CMAQ deadline again is fairly solid. It's again, we haven't released the materials, but we are fairly confident that the deadline for that is going to be September 30th, 2025. The LRIP deadline is statutorily set for us at January 15th, 2026. So that is a hard deadline that I definitely can't confirm today because that is provided for us in statute. And then once again, any potential deadlines for the carbon reduction program or for the agricultural roads improvement program would be dependent on authorizations for those programs through the state biennial budget process and through future congressional actions.
Okay, I do actually have a name for the next question. Brian asks, will we be able to provide the slides shown with the symposium today?
Yes, we will be able to provide the slides. We will have a PDF of the deck available. And I know there was that one typo on that one slide. We'll make sure that typo gets addressed before that gets posted out. So yes, those will be available on the local program symposium webpage.
Okay, next one, Benjamin from Taylor County asks, will the state be funding bridges up to 100% in the local bridge program for bridges that are on local roads, or has funding gone back to 80-20 for all bridges?
No, that's a great question. We know that there was a lot of excitement during the supplemental bipartisan infrastructure law solicitations with that opportunity to fund bridges on the lower functionally classed roadways, minor collectors and local roads at 100% federal cost share. That opportunity was included as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. It was not a permanent change that was written into federal code. So to start with the solicitation, we are assuming right now a maximum 80% federal share on future local bridge awards for the upcoming cycle. If that should change, with any future congressional actions, we will then go back to the awarded sponsors for those projects and discuss, potentially raising that up to whatever ceiling is determined by the federal government.
Next question, do applications need to be submitted by the deadline to be considered?
Yes, absolutely. Make sure that know what the application deadline, and really good guidance for any time you're applying for a state or federal grant. Know what the deadlines are. Make sure that your application is submitted by the date, and frequently the time of day is specified. And that information will be included in the application materials for SDP, Local Bridge, TAP, CMAQ, and LRIP. LRIP, I believe we go until midnight every year for SDP, Local Bridge, TAP, and CMAQ. I'm thinking it's probably going to be 5 p.m. close of business on those days that I previously mentioned. For SDP, Local Bridge, and TAP, that would be October 31st. For CMAQ, that would be September 30th.
Next question, what is QBS?
All right, that is a great question, Mitch. I think you're here, so I will definitely defer to your expertise on that one.
So QBS stands for Qualification-Based Selection. It's a federal law laid out in something called the Brooks Act. And it says that for engineering services, we have to pick our engineering consultants based solely on the qualifications that they submit to us. So only based on their ability to do the job and not based on cost. Unlike contractors that build, where they do get to bid.
Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was gonna ask, did I explain that well, or anything else you'd like me to go into?
I believe we've covered it. Thank you.
It's great. No, thank you.
Right. Next question is from Gary. If you write a grant for so many miles of road and then find out you have to pay more than what you thought, can you back down on the amount of miles, or do you need to know this upfront?
Okay, and I believe this is for this question is specifically related to LRIP, right? I think.
Based on the subject line of the email, I would say that is correct. Yes.
And the answer is maybe. It does depend a little bit on which LRIP component you're talking about. If the project in question is part of the LRIP entitlement component, it's a little bit less problematic to do that type of scope change. When you're talking about something in the LRIP discretionary or LRIP supplemental component, something that was awarded through a discretionary process, the problem becomes that project was awarded based on the originally submitted scope, right? So if you're talking about making a reduction to that, you definitely would have to indicate that you're maintaining the substantial majority of project benefits, and we would need to get concurrence on that type of a scope change by going back and talking to the discretionary committees. Depending on whether it's a town, a city, village, a county, and we would have to go back to those municipal representatives to gain concurrence on the scope change. So again, it depends. It's not something that's completely outside the realm of possibility, but it would be determined by a number of factors.
Okay, next question is from Darren with Delmore Consulting. We currently submit LRIP applications for multiple towns through TAS, but with the launch of TAPWeb, will everything move from the TAS system to the new one? And will we require a new login?
Okay, Steph, I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, great question. applicants will have to create a new a new login for TAPWeb. It will not carry over from TAS for logging into TAPWeb. So that, again, through the TAPWeb manual, you'll be able to learn how to create an account, and it's pretty seamless. So hopefully, you can set it up to be the same information, so you're only remembering one password.
Okay, thank you, Steph. Next question would be from the town of Cross. They are currently working on a project and are interested in obtaining help with design. Can we provide any resources for help regarding whom to contact?
Okay, Jodi, I don't know if maybe there's something you would want to. And I see that you're on the phone.
Yes, Buffalo County, I believe that's where the town of Cross is. They fall in the Northwest region. They can reach out to Randall Kirk. He is a local program project manager there, and he can field their questions.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And then we can respond back with Randy's contact information too, directly to that email.
It is also on the website as the LPM contact.
All right, next question. When will the next round of awards be announced?
That's a great question. It is somewhat, again, determinant on, on some factors outside of our control, the state biennial budget process, for example, but the goal really here is kind of getting back to business as usual, more of a sense of normalcy where we are soliciting for projects in the odd numbered years and awarding projects in the even numbered years. So the projects that we are currently going to go out and solicit for this year, we would anticipate being awarded between next March and May, Q1, Q2 of 2026.
Okay. We are at time, Merrill. It's up to you if we want to call it, or would you want to do one more on change management?
Let's do one more. Change management is important, so.
Okay. Will change management be approved for project alterations?
Okay, and certainly, again, that is dependent on a number of factors. I will definitely give this advice for any change management request that folks are thinking about. We would recommend that those requests be as highly detailed as possible, provide substantial justification, sound engineering-based justification for any project changes. We definitely, we understand that things happen. WisDOT will try and be as flexible as possible. However, the availability of funding is always dependent on Wisconsin biennial budget actions and annual federal congressional appropriations acts, as well as what other previously scheduled projects are currently existing in the fiscal year in question. So, even well-justified change management requests sometimes are going to get denied if there simply is no funding available in the fiscal year that's impacted by the change request. So, again, that would be the general guidance. In most cases, I mean, we're going to look at and look to try to provide as many different options as possible when these change management requests come in. Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you to everybody. Thank you to all the presenters today. Really appreciate everybody taking their, donating their time every 2 years to help put on this event. And thank you to everybody who participated and watched online, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.